Please wash, make a bracha, setz sich weg, verbringt, sagt l'chaim. Bruchim Habayim, welcome everyone. We gave a little time for people to serve themselves, to wash. Fabring a bissel, please make yourself at home, say l'chaim. It's the Alter Rebbe's Hilula. There's a word, when we sing the Alter Rebbe's Niggin, it's as if you give a pan to the Alter Rebbe. So imagine tonight, by this beautiful Hilula of the Alter Rebbe, in honor of my Shver Olav Shalom, and the Schwiger, and Yossi Greenglass, and Yuta Chava, the Eibishter soll helfen. They should have an aliyah, and Neshama should have an aliyah, and Ali Yidna Yeshua. The Baal Shem Tov made a hole in the wall of Golus, and the Alter Rebbe lit a candle and put the candle inside the hole. The Baal Shem Tov started Chasidus Hakloli, and the Alter Rebbe narrowed it down and brought it out with Chasidus Chabad. In order to start this Sudas Mitzvah, I'd like to ask my brother, Shaliach of the Rebbe in the Chaya Mushka Seminary, who is also a Chashuv sponsor of this evening's event, to please honor us with making Hamoitzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamoitzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. My Shver used to say by a Farbringen, when you belong to Toimchet Mimim, you are not only under the Nesias of the Rebbe, but you're all under the Nesias of the Baal Shem Tov, the Mezritcher Maggid, the Alter Rebbe, all the Rebbeim until our Rebbe. I would like to mention that when the Alter Rebbe did not know where to go, whether he should go to Vilna or whether he should go to Mezrich, so he asked, what do they learn in Vilna? And they told him, in Vilna they teach you how to learn. And what do they learn in Mezrich? They teach you how to daven. So the Alter Rebbe said, learn, I know how to learn. Daven, I don't know. And he chose to go to Mezrich. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our Rav, Morad Asra, Arav Bell, who just came. We'd like to start with the saying of the Kapitel Tilim. Everybody knows lately we've had things that happened that we need Rachmei Shamayim. May this Tilim and the schus of the Hilul of the Alter Rebbe bring good news to the Kehillah and to Klal Yisrael. May all our soldiers be protected, and may Klal Yisrael all over the world be protected. For the Kapitel Tilim of Kapitel Chav, please look at the chapter 20, which is on your screen, and we'd like to call upon an Einikol of Rabbi Greenglass, Rabbi Moshe Cohen, to please come up and say Kapitel Chav. Look at the screen if you don't have a Tilim in front of you.
Lamed Seyach Mizmul David Yancha Dinevim Sara Yisagev Hashem Alei Yaakov Yishlach Ezecha Mekedesh Umetzion Yisadeka Yisker Kol Min Chesecha Ve'elascha Yidash Nesela Yiten Lecha Chelvavecha V'chol Atzoscha Yimalei Neranina B'Yeshuasecha V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgel Yimalei Adonai Kol Mishalei Secha Ata Yadaiti Ki Yeshi Adonai Mishicha Yaneu Mishmei Kache B'Gvodes Yeshim Minei Eile Varecha Ve'ele Basusim Vanachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Heima Karav V'Nafalu Vanachnu Kamnu V'Naseidad Adonai Yeshi HaMelech Yaneinu V'Yem Kareinu.
For the next kapitel, We'd like to call upon Shaliach of the Rebbe in the Chaim Mushka Seminary, the Rebbe's Kapitel.
Everybody please rise. Shir HaMalais LeDavid Lule Adonai Shaya Lanu Yemane Yisrael Lule Adonai Shaya Lanu B'kum Aleinu Adam Azai Chaim B'La'unu B'chares Hampam Banu Azai Hamayim Shtafunu Nachala Avar Alav Shenu Azai Avar Alav Shenu Hamayim Azideinim Baruch Adonai Shelenu Sonanun Telev Shineihem נפשנו תציפונים לטה, מפח יויץ' מפח נשבע ואנחנו נמלטנו, עזרנו בשם אדינוי, עש השמיים וארץ.
It gives me great pleasure to call upon Rabbi Bell, Rav Bell, Morad Asra, congregation, Lubavitch, and Chava Bezdin of the Vadayir to please come forward and say L'chaim and say a few words.
Give me a yarmulke b'no l'chaim. L'chaim, empty cup, but fix that in Hashem. L'chaim. It's a tremendous Eis Rotzen. Chavdal Teves, Stalkus, Hilula of the Alter Rebbe. Just interesting, Ashkacha Pratis, I came across the bells of young man today, who tells me, oh, tomorrow's Chavdal Teves. He said that Bashal Shudis, in the main bells based methods, they'll sing the Gunim of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya. And he says there's Tanya Shurim going on over there now for men, for women. We see the Indian from Teres Achsidis, and the Alter Rebbe, Heilige Mespashet, continues to be spread. And Indian of Hafatzas Hamayanos Chutza applies to all different sorts of Yidden, and it also applies to all different levels of our lives, the Chutza of our own lives, that it should penetrate us in an inner way and totally. There's the Stalkos Alter Rebbe was a Mitzvah Shabbos. Chavdal Tevis was Mitzvah Shabbos Shmeis. So there's a Rishima from the Frierdiker Rebbe that he said the Erev Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe checked his pockets. It's the din, you're supposed to check your pockets to make sure you don't carry anything else out on Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe found a piece of paper in his pocket. And he took the piece of paper out of his pocket and he gave it to the Tzemach Tzedek. And he said, "V'dir zu nitzkemen," that this will become useful for you. You'll get some use out of this paper. And it seems that from the Rishima, that piece of paper was a letter that the Alter Rebbe, the last Torah we have from the Alter Rebbe, Nefesh HaShvela, which was a letter. The Rebbe says there's 3 different versions about when this letter was written. There's one version that says it was written Kamer Regoyim Lifnei Istalkusei. That was written Mitzvah Shabbos, a few moments before his Istalkus. Another Girsa says, let me get the exact lotion of here, Korav Lizman Istalkusei, close to the time of his Istalkus. And there's another version that says a week before his Istalkus. So the Rebbe said, we see from this that he took it out of his pocket out of Shabbos. It certainly wasn't a few moments before the Istalkus, but it was definitely close to the Istalkus. And the Rebbe said he didn't see much discussion about this letter, so the Rebbe did discuss it on a number of occasions. And it's called Nefesh HaShvela. It begins, Nefesh HaShvela be'emes lamita b'shorsha. Avedasa hi teira gashmis. That the soul of a truly humble person is connected with its source, which has to do with Yonim Gashmim. And the Alter Rebbe brings over there the Maimar HaMedrash, that they asked the Midas El Yenis. Hashem asked them, should he create the world? So, Emes, Midas HaEmes, said it's a world full of shkarim, don't create it. Not worth it, don't create it. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked Midas HaChesed, and Midas HaChesed said, yes, you should create the world. Why? And the Gersh, the Rebbe quotes the Gersh from the Meir Shorim, where it says, because it's a world which is full of shkarim and chasadim. So we understand, create it. The Chesed said create it because it'll be an Indian from Gemilas Chasadim. We'll have a lot of chasadim. But the Rebbe said a gewaldige Wort, the Rebbe called it, a gewaldige Wort. It's a world full of shkarim and chasadim. What's pshat? What's going on? The Rebbe explained that part of the Indian, and the Alter Rebbe actually goes into it, that the Indian of chasadim, there's chasadim gashmim, giving people money, giving people food, and so on and so forth. But it's also giving people advice in their daily lives, advice in their relationships, ben adam al-chaveirei, advice which as a result, the nature of this is that you're dealing with a lot of things which are not 100% true. When you're dealing with people disagreeing with each other or personal relationships, so it's not cut and dry, this is true and this is not true, there's different perspectives on things. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says, that you have to come down to the level, Nefesh HaShvela, that the true humility which is required in the time right before the Geula Mitzvah Shlema is this Shvela Be'emes, to come down and help people in Inyanim Gashmim, all the way down to Inyanim where there are personal disagreements between people, and you're going to have to deal with Shkarim as well. It's very interesting that Rebbe quotes this letter. There's in the famous Sicha Sheftim, Nun Aleph, where the Rebbe spoke about Yesh Novi B'Dareinu, and Yinim from Sheftayach and Yeyatzayach. Yinim from Sheftayach, a Shefet, he says the way things are, Al Piteira, Milamayil Lamata, this is the din, and he tells you the way it is. And it's not as so relevant what it is that the recipients think of that. What's relevant is what it says, what's the emes. But the Yinim from Yeyatzayach, to give somebody a eitzah, to give somebody advice, so that means coming down to the person's level and mislavshus, and coming down, and that's in Maila Mashiach, that he has both the Inyan from Sheftayach and the Inyan of Yetzayach. So the Rebbe brings down this letter, Nefesh HaShvela, on the Inyan of Yetzayach, and the Rebbe says that this is connected with Yigeres HaKedesh Chav Beis. Another place the Rebbe says he heard from Chassidim. Chassidim say that in Lubavitch they used to say, the Rebbe is quoting Chassidim who were quoting what they used to say in Lubavitch, that the letter Nefesh HaShvela, the Alter Rebbe wrote as an answer to what he wrote in Yigeres HaKedesh Chav Beis. What did the Alter Rebbe write in Yigeres HaKedesh Chav Beis? The Alter Rebbe gives a chelik to all the Chassidim. Why are you asking me in Yonim Gashmim? The Inyan that my Inyan is to give you Hadrach and Yonim Bruchnim, and Avedas Hashem, and Teira, and Tefillah, Avedas Hashem. And what are you asking me? The Inyan from Gashmias, to give I ask for a bracha b'Gashmias. This is only for Nevi'im Mamish, like Shmuel Areya, that Shaul lost his donkeys, and you ask a Navi about in Yonim Gashmim. And that's not my Inyan. Why are you asking me in Yonim Gashmim? So the Rebbe quotes over there, the Rebbe didn't say it himself, he's quoting what it says in Shurim Sefer Tanya, which the Rebbe was Magia. It says on the Shurim Sefer Tanya, he said, what we see, in spite of the fact that the Alter Rebbe wrote this in Tanya, nevertheless, the Chassidim continued to ask him for brachas in Yonim Gashmim, va'ana, it's underlined, and he answered them in Yonim Gashmim. So Chassidim in Lubavitch used to say that this letter, Nefesh HaShvela, Be'emes Lamite, is in Yonim Teira Gashmis, that was the Alter Rebbe answering that in the days of Iksis and the Mashiach, that you have to give the brachas taki in Yonim Gashmim, and that's Inyan from the Navi Mamish, and that's what the Rebbe said, the Yesh Navi B'derenu, and in Yonim Gashmim, and it's in Yonim, sometimes the Gashmi is Ruchnius too. I came across a letter, I was looking for this letter in the Igris of the Alter Rebbe, and I came across a letter it's not printed in the original Igris of the Alter Rebbe, a very interesting letter the Alter Rebbe wrote to his granddaughter. The Varaleya, his granddaughter, so he writes to his granddaughter, Gedel Bakoshosi, very short letter. It's very important, this request I have of you. Shalei l'shanes havtachosech. Do not forget what you promised me when you were in my house. You remember what you promised? You promised me you're not going to worry. Und sollst tamid freilich sein. You promised me you're always going to be happy. Yeah? Und sollst betuch sein, as if it alles recht sein, bako mikol kol. And you should have bitochen that everything is going to be good, which is really the teichen of trachu v'zayin good. He commanded her that this is something you should do, and especially in times where hayim haras elam, that the world is going through a tremendous ibekadinish. But the Yidach, when the Rebbe, not only the Yidach, that when the Rebbe quoted the Yalkut Shmeini about the Melech Paras and the whole. When you look at the Yalkut Shemeni, it seems like a little strange over there. You got a Melech Harvi, so a Melech Paras, and from the overseas, and then all the Yidden are afraid. When you look at the Yalkut Shemeni, you can't understand why these Goyish countries are fighting with each other. Why should the Yidden be afraid? Then it came the Gulf War. Yeah, so Iraq was in a war with Kuwait, and the United States mixed in. So what was his response? We're going to shoot rockets. We're going to shoot missiles at Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael get in the middle of this whole argument. And what's happening now? So now we see whatever it said then, and the Rebbe touched up. L'chura, Iraq is Bovel. It's not Paras. So the Rebbe said that Iraq can go on Paras also because it's the Persian Gulf. Okay, but now you don't need any limud. We're talking about Paras Mamish, and we're talking about Al Tiftach Peh also threatening our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and certainly that just as the Poshta Pshat Medrash also applies today, B'kol HaTekev, so too the Rebbe's Avtachas will certainly come. And the Ikar Avtacha, Higi is man Gulaschem, B'peil Mamish, and Rebbe Shabtei Vanira Vanigla, and the Schus Alter Rebbe. And so we're learning now, preparing for Yud Shvat and Bosi Lagani, that the whole Meile of Deira Shvi, Mazayin Shvi Rishon, so everything starts from the Alter Rebbe, and certainly we'll have this Galus very quickly and be able to hear Teira Chadasha from Mashiach Tzidkeinu, L'chaim.
Yashakoyach Gadol, Rabbi Bell, just to continue on the Kuda of the Geras HaShvela that the Rabbi Bell mentioned, I remember hearing a word that the Alter Rebbe said, Der was het sich anhalten in my Klemke, will ich sein mit dem bezeh ubeba. Whoever will hold on to my door handle, I will be with him in this world and in the world to come. So Chassidim asked, what does it mean to hold the doorknob of the Alter Rebbe? Do you have to go to Lubavitch and look for his door and hold on to the doorknob? What it means is, if you, it's the Mittel Rebbe teached, if you have Ahavas Yisrael. And if you learn the Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe had Mesiras Nefesh 54 days in prison, every day for one Perek of Tanya. I remember our Mashpia in Yeshiva used to tell us, this Perek Tanya that you're learning, that I am teaching you, the Alter Rebbe sat in prison for you to be able to have this Perek Tanya. To continue with our program, we'll now show Poischem B'Dvar Malchus, a Sikh of the Rebbe on the Alter Rebbe, 3 innovations, the 3 pillars of the world. Please give your attention to the screens. We welcome our keynote speaker, Harav Chaim Dolphin, who just walked in. Baruch haba, welcome.
Der alte Rebbe, was sich sicher gewusst, was man ihm reingesetzt in Meister und wie kommt es am Mott ihm befreit und gegeben, beschachert gewesen noch, Jotze beschoben, Jotze bechelus, sagt dass sie verbunden mit dem Posik Pode beschoben. Wo das hat Posik in Tanach, in Tivim, wie kedei zu wissen, die Pirush bedauert, dass man sich guckt und in Telische Balpe, sagt die Gmor in Bruch, ist mein Pode beschoben, was ist der Pirush Adover? Aber das meint man, hoesig beteiru b'gmilas chasode, mispalel im Atzibur, ist auch dermals die Pode beschoben, mit Nafsche, Mikrovle, Tivrabi, Moi, Modi, wo das sind die drei Unionen, i dermals für Doani, Liu, Lebone, wird der Pode beschoben, Nafsche, nicht nur der David, nur das geht ich auf HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Liu, Lebone, bebein Israel. Seit man an der Linien habe die Gehülle von dem alten Leben verbunden mit drei Sachen. Mit Eisek Beteiro und der zweite Sache mit Milas Chasodim und die dritte Sache mit Spalol im Atzibur. Wie bald als der Meister Begoliot gehabt auf sich am Malschinus und wir haben sehr gedacht, schreiben den Malschinus Taki, wie bei sie ist gekommen, bläht sehr als Bord und sehr sicher. Wie bald aber, als seine nicht in bald Pchire, ist in dem Nusser Seelen darf sein, wie Pnimis, was haben sie geschrieben, Masei, der Fall, was Bepel, jeder ihnen hatte, in Basich, hat die Nekude, was Bepnimis, jedes Tag über Mitchis hatte. In dem Malschinus gewähnen noch die drei Sugen, wenn geht zu Heisig Betero, wenn geht zu Milos Chassodim, wo das ihnen schon gesagt wo Gemilas Chassodim und der Linie von Mispalol im Atzibur. So gewähnt der Linie, was seht, dass es wie das zwischen Afrimo der Tere, der Alshona. Al durch der Ruf, es kommt in Mesalvo sein Belimo der Tere. Der zweite Teil, die gewähnt über Gemilas Chassodim, die Geld, was Geschichte in Eretz Yisrael zum Kever, und zum Aufhalten dort an den Chachomim, Almonis, wie sehen wir Chulu. Hatten das auch geteilt, damit sich das Gedei, können noch haben mit dem Zar. Und danach hatten gesagt, am Zar drüber, was mit Meidig mit Tfilo, und eine neue Nussach hat Tfilo, mit der besonderen Stiebler für Chulu, sie wird das nicht Akita Chadosho, ki mevui Baruch in die Xaval schon. Nur bei dem hat das Sibel gesetzt und hat das verteilt danach, von dem Schledelwattel, von der Cheke, von dem Prokuror, von dem Kateger. Von die Goyim, I dem dieser Bemele ist ein Reis Heper. Okay, ja du besteht ins Vornehm, aber ich habe mir davon, steht sich und Schuhe bringt wie jetzt, ist auch selbstverständlich, dass darf ihn fragen bei Neif. Wie soll aber, als gefühlt sich in Amai mit dem Matze, was hat darum sich nicht genähert. Und damals, da steht ins Vornehm, ein zweiter Hitze, man soll hören, was ist die Meinung von der Szene und dann verkehrt. Und das, was sie haben geschworen, der Szene, wo der Goy hat dann noch das gelehnt, von dem Katrei, und das ist eine Linie, was sie gewähnt verkehrt. Dem alten Rebbe ist der Achsidus Bichlau. Allah, es kam Achsidus Chabad, und das Masbir, der Jäger von Tera, Schelei Bejerach, wie sie gewähnt, der Pferde. Bei dem Szene, bei dem Zahl, mit dem Kateger Schelei, sehen sie kommen der Epechador. Als Hepech nicht wie der alte Rebbe hat gesagt, nur wenn der Hepech hat da, wir salben sich auf verschoben bei ihm der Tag. Weil der ist der Eche, der Gemilas Chassodim, der alte Rebbe hat geschickt, unter die Stütze und bekam Fannen zu die Jiden, was gefunden sich in Eretz Yisrael. Die sollen dort nur lernen, und mit keinem Samitzes und durch, mit Kader sein, Bias HaMashiach, wo demut wird so befreit werden von den Sultan. Bei dem Szene ist es gekommen nach Heper, aber das schickt mir gedreht selbst von dem Sultan. Sie kommen Lila, man weiß nicht von der Nähe, darf man hören, was der Szene sagt, und demut weiß man, dass er verkehrt wie sagt. Weil der sehe, bei mir gehen, ist Pablo de Matzibur. Haben wir gesagt, wir bald gemacht, na, besondere Minhogen, besondere Schieber, und wer weiß, zu was mit Mispalle sein und nach was mit und zu wer Mispalle, mit den Ktaben Malchino, ich gewinne Punkt der Heper. Haben wir gefragt, bei wem soll es sein, Ziehbar, Litwischen, Ziehbar, Galicianer, Ziehbar, Pelischen, Ziehbar, wem es soll nicht sein. Wer ist meilig mit Schilo, wird renten, als da der halbe Scholingen, das ihm hat der Schache zu sehen. Al kol ponim zu sehen. Wo das ist echt, wie gerät früher, der Szene hat gesagt, benutzer Kacha, du ruf kann reis Alinen, Hepech hat viele, Lekei Lemes und viele Semes, die das gewährt und gewusst hat, das ist Punkt der Hepech hat dort. Und das ist echt als Bode, was sie die Maschinen gewähnt auf die 3 Unionen, Lekei ist Scheker Engel, Aglayin, darf man aber haben, ein Bitchilosse. Zitate der alte Rebbe hat gekocht in Eisig Beteiro mit Milas Fassodin und Mispavali Matzilo. Noch danach in der Gewehr, wie sagte, melde schon mal, sei es in den nächsten der Schamnatsche Kitchen-Nese. Der Grupp Masri, wenn der Rebbe nicht mehr sieht, na das ist die Linie, wie der alte Rebbe fährt. Peterburg und noch Peterburg. Was auch auf die, was ich fährt Peterburg, ist der Gewehr, der alle Unionen, wie gerät früher, schon von Norch hat noch angegeben, und mit seinem Gewinn kam Allah ist bei noch seindig bei dem Meri Hamagid mit Miseritsch, weil der wird sehr eche, wenn er geht zu Milas Chassodim, ist gewinn der Ihnen als Docker noch kam als Mann im Riefnise, bis war nicht du, wenn geht zu den Naden, als hat gegeben, dass Kedei zu Misadra sein Iden, bei Ihnen schon vernossen. Wie beim See gekommen, vor sie Iden, da sich misspannen sind, der Ogerettlich hat Chilat Neid. Mit dem Schwert, als auf Naden ist selber la Boss, und danach hat das auf drei genutzt, auf Milas Chassodim, und das ist noch gewähnt, noch jeder noch gegangen ist Riech. Weil der sehr echt und Mispallel im Azibur, die durch die Anlage für den Malzulegen, mit nicht nach Ihnen, nach Filo, echt noch jedem eine Siechele.
Without any further ado, we have, Baruch Hashem, the honor to welcome to Montreal this year in honor of the Chavdalet Tevet Isvadus, Harav Achosid Reb Chaim Dalfin, who will be Mahane de Oilam with a Chassidische Verbringen.
So it's the Alter Rebbe's Yortzeit tonight, Chavdalet Tevet. Firstly, I want to thank Reb David. You know, I've been to many, many places. Never have I been hosted with such Pashut Hachnosas Orchim and kindness. I once was on a plane and I met the wife of a very prominent Rav, a Lubavitcher Rav, who's in his 70s, and we were talking about her family background, and she says, you know, they ask my husband to come to speak here and there. In general, he doesn't like to do it. And when he does it, when he gets off the plane, they don't offer him food, a little nap. I felt bad for her. Reb David is, Mamish, I'm saying this not to boast his ego, just push it to know how to treat a guest, any guest. So grace Yashikoyach Reb David. Where's the L'chaim, David? Right over here. No, Gison a bisschen. Aha. No, davon fahren mit L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachim shakal niyabadvarei. Sing a nigun first of the Alter Rebbe. Please sing together. This isn't a show. It's a fabrengen. I told David, if you want a lecture, it's a whole different mahalach. If you want a seminar, it's another mahalach. A fabrengen is we sit together, we sing together, we laugh together, we cry together, we open up our hearts. And you need patience. If you don't have patience, if you have spilkes, you ain't going to get the gist of the Farbrengen. And that's your decision. So let's begin with the Chassidish Niggin of the Alter Rebbe. Kol Deidi? He knows how to play Kol Deidi? Kol Deidi, Deidi, Deifei, Deidi, Deifei, Pescheli, Kol Deidi, Deidi, Deifei, Deidi, Deifei, Pescheli, Pescheli, Achoi Ziraya, Iyoi Nozi Zamozi, Pescheli, Achoi Ziraya, Ziyoi Zamozi, ay, 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 da, 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 ay, 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 Rabbi David told me today that Rabbi Greenglass, Oliver Shalom, and this Farbrengen is the Schus Nishmasai, it's your side, I believe, was yesterday, was very big on chazering Maimorim, Balpeh. This is what David told me today. I didn't know that. Bashgacha Pratis last week, talking about the arrangements. So I said I think it would be appropriate, if time allots, to say a shtickle maimer, sai because it's Chavdalet Tevis, sai because your Shver, Rabbi Glingas, was the mashpia here, and therefore, you know, and then he told me this today. So I'm going to chazer, bekitzer, because I know you have a lot of patience to hear of my Chassidus now. That's what you're up to after a good day of snow. And before that, I asked Reb David if we could sing the niggin as a prelude to the Maimer the Rostov Niggin, the Niggin that was sung by the Rebbe. And before that, let me tell you that I don't see the Rebbe here, but the Rebbe Gerari, those that were around in the late 1950s, there was a whole vikuach, a whole debate about which niggin you should sing at which time, until the Rebbe made a vad hamanagnim, a board of kind of singers, of bali menagnim. Some were Reb Heshke Gansburg. The three were the four were Reb Heshke Gansburg, Reb Yoel Kahn, Reb Shamshon Charitonov, and Reb Shmuel Zalmanov. And they were the ones who decided and regulated which nigunim kind of should be sung when. There's a lot more to say about this, but it's not tonight's theme. There is actually a tape that was released online, which is very interesting to hear how they're at a meeting, I think it's 1960, and they're talking about which nigunim, and they're going back and forth. It's not so clear, but you get the gist of how these Hasidim were debating with each other and singing, and one said to the other, "Lo meherren, let me hear you sing it." And that's how they came and formalized the nigunim. So in Chabad today, when a chassid says a maimer, they sing a certain niggin. They don't sing the niggin that was sung before the Rebbe said a maimer. Reb David said I should share things I heard from various mashpiyim. So I heard from Reb Mendel Futterfass, who happened to be one of an uncle, a great uncle of ours. And I asked Reb Mendel about which niggin is appropriate to sing today before a maimer. And Reb Mendel told me, "Me meg zingen der Rostov niggin, me meg zingen der maimer niggin, was gesungen beim Breben." It's okay if you sing that niggin. So I'm going on his shoulders. I'm going to sing together now the maimer niggin, and then I'll say a shtickle maimer, okay? No, where's the, no? Ay, la, da, la, da. yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, yeah, la da, la da, la da, la da. Hey, yeah, oh, la da, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ay, 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 la ra, ay, la ra, la ra, la ra, la ra, ay, la ra, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 Chamishim Share Bina Nivru Beilom, 50 gates of unity were created. The Gemara says, Memtes, 49 gates were given, and the Shar Hanun, and the 50th gate, was not given. Asks the Rebbe Rashab in his Maimer that he said in Tofresh Nun Gimel, 1893, in conjunction with the first time that he told the Frierdiker Rebbe about Chai Elul, print in the back of Sefer HaSichos, and today in the Maimorim of Tofresh Nun Gimel, he asked the question, what is the purpose of knowing that there's 50 gates if we only have access to 49? So why tell us that there's a 50th gate? And to explain this, he introduces the concept that the word nivriu doesn't only mean to create, but it also means to reveal, his galis. He bases it on the Gemara in Chulin, Ein Chosheshin Shemehivri, regarding the laws of Trefus, with a puncture in the animal. So the Gemara says we're not concerned that it's a puncture to the point where it's revealed. From that we see that the word Bodo Hivri also means revelation, not only creation. And he says that the way to reveal the 50 gates is through the avodah of Torah, through the service of studying Torah. And he explains that in learning Torah, I'm just giving you a synopsis of the Maimer. And he explains that there's two levels of Torah, Talum, Matar, Rein, and Du, which is equivalent to the concept of Isarusa de Leil and Isarusa del Talta, the arousal from above and below, which means, is the inspiration coming from within you, or is the inspiration coming from above, imposed on you? And the Rebbe continues in the Maimer that this is also why we say, Chayla, the word sick, Ches Vov Lamed Hey, its numerical equivalent, its gematria is 49. And he asks, if someone is immersed in the avodah of Torah, why is he a chayla? And he says, this is the Lashon from Rebbe Rashab in the Maimer, Dai be'remezeh. He doesn't really explain it at this point, but says it's adequate enough. The fact that the gematria of the word is chayla, it shows something is lacking in your avodah satorah. He goes on to explain that this is the difference between the bitl hayesh and the bitl b'mitzias, which is the concept also of riyah and shmiyah. When seeing something, the clarity of seeing versus the knowledge coming from hearing something. that the bittul hayesh, the obliteration of self, is only compared, it is to shmiya. There isn't clarity like riya. Riya leads to what we call bittul b'mitzius, the non-existence of existence. And he goes on to say more in Avodas Hashem, this means that there can be a time when a person falls, spiritually falls. And the Gemara says in Saita that the falling consists of various different kinds of chaylas. One chaylas, one illness is compared to you get a cold, a tzina. Another type of illness, chas v'sholim, it's much worse. And finally, there's a chaylas which causes complete apathy. And the Rebbe's masbir that this is all caused by what we call indulgences, taivas heter. It's kosher, it's permissible, it's mutter, but it's unnecessary. So the fact that you make it necessary according to your standards and thoughts, that's a taiva. That's an indulgence. And what that causes is various kinds of maladies, spiritual maladies, the equivalent of a cold and worse. Then he goes on to say that this is all when is what's called a yerida, a gradual descent, where a person gradually descends from their level of kedusha and tara to, unfortunately, a fall, a spiritual fall. But then there is Rahman Litzlan, what he calls a nefila, me'igra rama lebira mikta, from a high mountain to a deep valley. It's a very deep fall, uncontrollable. What is that in spiritual terms? It's when a person not only indulges in dvarim amutarim, but he indulges Rahman Litzlan hoyelesi in dvarim asurim, forbidden matter. And the Rebbe goes into details there. So the question is, all this comes from a lack of what he calls avodah in Torah the right way, with the bittul, with complete humility and subservience to the Eibishter. So what's the solution? He's identified very well the problem. Says the Rebbe, and it's a very unique lashon in this maimer, it might be only in this maimer, where he says, he calls for tshuva. Well, tshuva we know about. But the way the Rebbe writes in this maimer, that Rashab writes in the maimer is, the tshuva is, his lashon is, hazaza klolis. In today's language, it would be a paradigm shift. A complete change, a mindset change. Only after having hazaza klolis and saying, I don't want to be this way anymore, without the details. I must vacate. I must make a change. Once you have that paradigm shift that hazaza klolis, that Rashab says l'chol hapochos once a year. When you have that once a year, then you can go on to Torah mitzvahs. And each one impacts you, b'derech premium, b'derech makiv, as explained the Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe brings it in Tanya. And he concludes the Maimer that the fact that it says Shivim Ponim B'Torah, and that's Shivim B'Gemat Yisoid, Gemat Shivim, 70, that's what the Soid is at Torah. But Galia the Torah is 49. And he says another tremendous thing at the end of the Maimer, that Afilim L'Tzadikim Gedolim, the Lashon from Rebbe Rashab, even to great Tzadikim, what was revealed to them was only the 49 gates. But with Avodah in Torah, with Bittul, through Bittul, we then use the 49 gates in the proper way, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the Shara Nun. Nope, that was a shtickle maimer. A bissel Wasser, yeah.
Yasher Koyach. Harav Dolphin, I have to tell you, I'm sure my Shver is very happy because my Shver would always ask the Bachrim to chazer my Maram Balpeh. And many Yungalite came over to me and tell me that what made them a mensch is when Rab Wolf gave them the self-confidence that they could learn the Maimer Balpeh. And Rab Wolf, when he used to go to the mikveh, him and the Bachrim with him would take 45 minutes to walk. And I asked them, what did they do during that time? They chazer the Maimer Balpeh. So please, Rabbi Dalfin, continue bring with the Olam.
So, it's Chav Dalet Tevis. So, I want to talk a little about Chav Dalet Tevis with a few mices. And I have a few Nakudas. Farbrengen is not a time to zählen jeder Wort. You know what that means? Tomorrow morning, you're going to say, he said this, I liked it, I didn't like it. That's not a Farbrengen, that's a drosha. You want a drosha? Not me. It's a free exchange of ideas and words and concepts. And a Farbrengen needs participation, so please participate. So, the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe began being a chassid. I was spoken 4 places. Koyach to Rebbe Avram for bringing me to the seminary and to the other meisters. You have wonderful meisters. The Alter Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in the Sicha, it was called the Litvak. But I found in one Sicha, in the Naya Bichlach that came out, that the Frierdiker Rebbe says he was like a misnagit. He walked across the street kind of when the simple people, the Amaratzim, were walking. Can you imagine and think of the Alter Rebbe that way? I can't. As I state, I look it up in the Sicha. Anyway, how does he become a chassid? How does he become a chassid? So we know the story. The Alter Rebbe went to Mezrich instead of Vilna. And when he was there, he says, I came here to learn how to daven. What does it mean, how to daven? The Alter Rebbe knew the Peter Shatfil is better than anyone else before he became a chassid. He means, how do I connect to the Eibishter through davening? And that's a very difficult thing. Most difficult thing is to attach through tefillah. It's a neshama arbit. It's work of the soul. Anyway, he goes there and he sees they're davening till 12 and 1 and 2. Alter Rebbe says, I came here to learn how to daven, but not to spend half a day davening. Alter Rebbe had a shiurim. He was a shaloyid, a makubal. Alter Rebbe was full of learning. I'm going to give away, Bocherim, I'm going to give away all my time, half of my day, davening? No way. And he leaves. Parenthetically, what I'm telling you now, Reb Yoel once verbringed with us all night, Yutes Kislev in Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, the yeshiva, on this story, all night. And I'm giving you over the Tamsis. Reb Yoel started to verbring with us 8 o'clock, Yutes Kislev night, and he walked out 7 in the morning. And I'm not being magazim, I'm not exaggerating. And Rabbi Yoel was masber this story, that the Alter Rebbe came back for his scarf, and then he heard the Maggid talking an Indian about the kashrus of a ray, of a lung, and he saw his goinus in Nigla. He said, "Oy bazoi, if so, I'm going to stay." And Rabbi Yoel asked the Fabrengen, like, come on, that's what got the Alter Rebbe to stay. You know, when you hear a story, you got to analyze the story. And Rabbi Yoel was masbeh that night, and I share it with you. The shawl represents, the scarf represents Geshem, Gashmias. The Alter Rebbe went to get his scarf means he came to understand that elikus, that godliness, is found most in Geshem, in the material. And that was a revolutionary idea for the Alter Rebbe, because you could learn Shas and Poskim and Shulchan Aruch and Musar. As a felt Chassidus, if you're missing the study of Chassidus, you don't have this Nakuda. You can't relate to this Nakuda. In other words, Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe, explains to us, especially in Tanya, explains to us the Mile of Geshem. The Rav Rebbe Bell spoke about. I heard the Nefesh HaShvela, and the Rebbe has the Sikh on it, of course. The Mile of Geshem. And again, here you have to ask yourself, what do you mean the Mile of Geshem? The Alter Rebbe in Perek Chav Gimel and Tanya says, "B'reiva yishtamshus," in a negative way, that we get used to Gashmis, like an old car versus a new car. You know, it's old, it goes. A new car, it's new, it's very nice, but you got to learn the car. The Gashmias is old. It's with us from our youth, from our birth. And we become so accustomed to it. I told, I think the Bachram, I remember Bachram, the girls, I spoke somewhere today, a mashal I heard from a Melech Tzibur, another mashpia of ours in Morristown. You invite people to your table. One of the people hasn't eaten a long time. He comes from poverty. The other person comes from a wealthy home, but he doesn't happen to have a meal now. We have a place now in Borough Park. It's what you call a soup kitchen, but it's so far from a soup kitchen. All the Shenster, the Salter, Shamter, Borough Park come in to take Pasha to eat. They're hungry. They cop a mincha at a minion factory, and they go in. So someone coming from a Gvirische Stub, a wealthy home, and Reb David, the host, gives each one a plate of food. When they start eating, who eats with more gluttony? As we say in good old Yiddish, who is fressing? Wer fresst? No? The poor person, right? He hasn't eaten in a long time. The person who normally has food and now he needs some food and he's eating some food, he sits as a proper with etiquette and he eats. Voten gemeint, you would think that who is more caught by the food? Who is more a slave to the food? The poor person, not the wealthier person. So the Balak told us just the opposite. It's the Gvir. What's the proof? Just try pull away the plates from each of the people. Who's going to go more bonkers? Who's going to become more upset and more angry? The poor person or the wealthy person? The wealthy person. Why? Because by the poor person, mit the Essen, he and the food are not one. There is who he is, a poor person. A person who comes from poverty, slave mentality. He didn't eat, frester. But is he the food? No. The Gvir, his comforts, his food, and he are one. And when the nimmst weg sein Teller, and when you take away his plate, you've touched him. And you touch him, he's very upset and angry. Gashmias is such a luring commodity. It captures you. You know, to know how to deal with an enemy, you need to know your enemy. Yet the Alter Rebbe says in the Geras HaShvela that it's the Gashmias that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wishes to be the seat of what we call divinity, Elikus. I don't know how Rabbi Bell would translate this, but I always ask, give me a one-line definition of what Chassidus is. You got one line. So I found it once in Emmanuel Shochat's, one of his books, and I loved it. And this is it. The study of divinity. In Hebrew, Elikus. Chassidus is Elikus. You're dealing with divinity, divine. The Alter Rebbe says, the ultimate of Gashmias is Elikus, but you have to use it right. All the Ruchnius is very important as a preparation, etc., but it's all about the Geshem. So when the Alter Rebbe went back to get his scarf, Reb Yoel explained, the scarf is symbolic of Geshem, of Gashmias. And the Alter Rebbe came to understand my entire learning, Shalom and Zoyar and Gemara and Shulchan Aruch and everything. It's a gewaldik, but it's not Elikus as Elikus is through the Geshem. Of course it's Elikus. Torah's Torah. It reminds me, you know, there's a publication called Hakriya V'Akdusha that the Frierdiker gave out in 1940, 41, and 45. And tell you a little history, because I don't think the Olam knows this. The editor of Hakriya V'Akdusha was an uncle of Reb Yudel Keller. You've heard of Reb Yudel Keller of Crown Heights? Whose father was a shtickle secretary of the Rebbe, our Rebbe, in the 1940s. So he had an uncle who lived at the time, I think, in New Haven. And he was an editor, actually, of a paper that came out here in Canada. I think it was called the Kanadische Adler. Adler. He, I believe, was the editor of that. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he came, the Frierdiker Rebbe found out somehow, and he called him to come to him. And he told him he wants them to be the editor of Hakriya V'Akdusha, but he doesn't want anyone to know, etc., etc. I heard this from Talmidim, labeled Posner of Sholem, Talmidim who were there in 770 and 1940s, 42, 43, 44. So he would come, and they saw a person they never saw before walking in to 770 and walking up to the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment. 1 week, a second week, a third week. No one knows who he is. So a few Bachirim, you know, Bachirim, they said, you go over to say, Reb Yid, Shalom Aleichem Reb Yid, wer sind ihr, who are you? And he says, he just keeps on going back into the train to Manhattan to take from Port Authority, wherever, to take the train to New Haven. And they see they have to go with a heavy hand because he's not speaking. So they told him, we see you come here every week, and if you don't tell us who you are and what you're doing, will spill the beans. So he told them. In the first edition, take a look in Akriya Vakdusha, I think it's November of 1940, if my memory serves me well. The first edition, he writes about what is Chassidus. I'm saying this because to what I said before. And he writes there in Yiddish, it was in Yiddish, of course. He writes there, to understand what Chassidus is, he talks about Nigla. And he quotes the Gemara and the Mishnah, Shoshanoga Kasapora, and other Mishnahs. And the way he writes it, one can walk away thinking that it's not Chas v'Sholem Torah. But what's really Torah? Chassidus. The Frierdiker Rebbe, and look in the next 2, 3, 4 editions, in the letters, you'll see, got letters from Rabbonim all over America. Ad kadei kach, that they came to Reb Yasha Ber Soloveitchik, Rabbi Soloveitchik, who had a great mind, tongue, and pen, and they wanted him to write a letter, a protest against this article. I have not found, I looked and searched, I have not found it, and I do not believe that it was written, but some do say it was written. Anyway, the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think in Chelik Hey or Vav, one of the Chalakim of Igros Kodesh, writes a letter to this editor, and he says, you have to write a retraction, because the way you wrote it, you meant well, but he was new to Chassidus, and you don't explain the mile of Chassidus with putting down Nigla. And he wrote a retraction. So I'm saying this because Chas v'Sholem, when we talk about the Nefesh HaShvela, the mile of Gashmias, it's not at all Chas v'Chalila, Chas v'Sholem, to belittle Nigla, the Torah, etc. Reb Yoel, in explaining this story, added another caveat. It doesn't say in the Maaseh that the Alter Rebbe kind of got enamored to the point where he stayed in Mizrich for 3 years to learn more Nigla. It doesn't say that. What triggered him and chapped him was the Nigla discussion of the Maggid. But what did he do for 3 years? He immersed himself in Avodas HaChassidus, in Avodas HaTfilah, and he became a chassid. That's how the Alter Rebbe became a chassid, according to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Chaim l'chaim. Where's the Zirkin to help sing the Berel Messiah's Niggin? We'll sing a Niggin now from Chassidim from Krabitschuk, a Geschmack and Niggin called the Berel Messiah's Niggin. Chaim. Chaim Avram, Atzloch et Kol HaYonim. Reb David Chaim. Shoma Fnei Shver Zohom Naliyah. Get this to come. My brother Chaim. Chaim. Ay, la da, ay, 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 la da, ay, la da, ay, 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 la ba ba. Ay, la da, ay, 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 la da, ay, la da, ay, la da, ay, 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 ya ya, ay la la, ay la la, la la, la la, la la, ay 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 ay, ay la la. Ah, hey, ya, la, la, ya, ya, la, la, ay, la, la, ya, ay, la, la, hey, ya, la, la, ya, 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 ay, 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 la, la, ah, hey, ay, la, la, ay, ay, la, la, hey, ay, la, la, ay, la, la, hey, ay, la, la, ay, 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 la, la, mama, mama, ay, la, la, ay, la, la, ay, la, la, ba, 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 Chaim, Chaim. So, I mentioned before that our great uncle was the Mendel Futterfass. I want to tell you a story that I don't believe the Olam knows, and the punchline and the message is very, very relevant. The Mendel's mother's name was Mariasha Badana Futterfass. She was married to Reb Chaim Futterfass. And, I'm sorry, she was married to Menachem Mendel Futterfass, because Mendel Futterfass' name was Menachem Mendel ben Menachem Mendel, because his father died in Nisan while she was pregnant. And Mendel was born 5 months later or so. Anyway, so the mother had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. The oldest was Hanoch Hendel Futterfass, who became later Hanoch Hendel Lieberman, the Hasidic artist. He was born on Yudches Teves. I'm sorry, he passed away Yudches Teves Tofrei Samach. And then there was Golda, who became later Golda Shem Tov. Actually, before that was Brocha Serebransky, that's my wife's Bubba, her grandmother. Reb Zalman Serebransky's wife. And then there was Golda Shem Tov, married to Reb Ben Zion Shem Tov, Ben Shem Tov. And the youngest was Mendel Futterfass, Reb Mendel Futterfass. Hanoch Henech, Reb Hendel Lieberman, those that remember him, or knew him, or saw him, he was more of a Balabatish Chassid. In his youth, he wore a clean shirt, pressed, with a jacket. He was tidy. He was put together, as they say. Reb Mendel was a bocher in Kharkov, in Nevel, in Kremenchuk, in various Lubavitcher yeshivas in the underground during the 20s. And those that knew him, which I believe many of you knew him, he wasn't as tidy. Not at all, Avram says. That's right. There's a picture online of Reb Mendel sleeping on a bench. You know, you see him sleeping on a bench. I think it's a 770 or Kfar Chabad. You know, the clothing gets creased. Makes no difference. So listen to this line that his mother, Bar Yasha, said to Mendel, and we'll talk a little bit about the lesson. She says, Mendel, du meinst, du bist der große Chassid. You think you're the big Chassid. Mendel Futterfass, Kharkov, Rashab, Friedeke Rebbe. We're talking about in those days. Lubavitch, you're the real McCoy. And your brother Hendel, even though he learned in Lubavitch, Mendel Futterfass did not learn Lubavitch. He did have Yechidus with the Rebbe when he was 9 years old, which he told me about, and maybe I'll tell you later. But Chanech Hendel and Hendel went to Odessa to learn art. And you know, when you go to Odessa, you don't come out as a Lubavitcher Tumim. It's hard. It's difficult, the challenges, etc., etc. So she says to Mendel, she says, Mendel, du meinst, that du bist der emes Chassid. You think you're the real Chassid. Aber dein Bruder Hendel, nah, is nicht der richtige Chassid. He's not the real Chassid. So she tells him, you know what the difference between you and him is? Tragt gepresste Hosen. He wears pressed pants und liegt, and he's immersed in the pants being exactly on the crease and exactly beautiful. That's his taiva. Und du, Mendel, tragst gekneitsche Hosen. You're wearing creased pants und du liegst in demselbe taiva, but not as pressed pants, but creased pants. So you aren't any better than your brother. When I heard this line, I heard it from the Berel Futterfass, the Mendel's son. He told me this. This is such an eye-opener. It's such an insight. In humanity, in character, and also, what does it mean to be a chassid? You think of a chassid, but someone who is quieter and more put together. Is that we call him? What do we call him in Chabad? Sometimes in the yeshiva, the bachrim here, a balabessel. You know what a balabessel is? A balabas, a layman who works and eats and sleeps, and tomorrow works and eats and sleeps, and 3 days works, eats, and sleeps. But the chassid is, he drinks a lot of mashke, he verbringt all night. V'chulu, v'chulu. My friends, me can sein a chassid, you could drink mashke, and you could verbring all night, and you can learn a lot of chassidus, and you have the same taiva. It's called taiva of ruchnius. Who says that taiva gashmius is worse than taiva ruchnius? That's what Maryasha Badana was telling Reb Mendel, her son. It's the zelbe taiva. It's the same taiva. Just this is the choice here and this is the choice there. The Alter Rebbe, tonight's the Alter Rebbe's Yortzeit. Rebbe Rashab says, we sit by Chassidus Shavabrengen, you learn a shtickle Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, etc. You're bringing a pidyon nefesh to the Alter Rebbe. You know what that means? Every one of us here has a need. A shidduch, health, parnosa, hatzlocha, everyone. Tonight, tomorrow, the 24 hours, says the Rebbe from Satan, you bring a pidyon nefesh to the Alter Rebbe by Fabrengen on his day, which we're doing now, and learning his chassidus. So when you learn chassidus, chassidus is not just a limud. It begins with a limud, but it's objective. Its modus operandi is to be more getlich, more godly, not just more spiritual. There are plenty of spiritual people. More godly. What does it mean to be more godly? More godly means that whatever the Eibishter HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of you, you're right there. The Alter Rebbe and Perek Mem Aleph, which I really hope you walk away with one thing from the Farbrengen, is to either learn by heart, os be'os, the Perek Mem Aleph, the first 12 lines, or the concepts, and then think them every day before you daven. Why do I say that? Because my mashpir, Rabbi Avrom Mayor Drizzen, told me that in Lubavitch, the Bocherim would think Chassidus before davening. They had 2 tracts. One was they thought over something, the same thing every day for months and years. And not to get bored, they also thought a second tract, a new inyan, a new idea, a new mimer. So the Alter Rebbe in Perek Mem Aleph, I don't want to go into all the pratim. He says, Hashem leaves the upper and the lower worlds, and he comes to the person, and therefore, Kabbalah soil, right? Then he says, V'hine Hashem nitzav love, and the Rebbe makes one of the 12 psukim, V'hine Hashem nitzav, Hashem is standing upon you. And how does that section end on this next page? So I ask you a question. It's repetitious. He just said, etc., etc. I said, it's Kabbalah soil, like a servant to a master. Then he adds, V'hine Hashem nitzav love. God stands upon you, and therefore, you have to stand before the Eibers, the Kohen, before the Melech. It seems to be repetitious. So I was thinking about this, and what came to me, and I asked him Shalom Charatonah this Shabbos in 770. He said he thinks that's the right pshat, and that is the first time the Alter Rebbe was talking about Kabbalah soil, accepting the yoke of Hashem, doing what Hashem wants. V'hine Hashem nitzav alav is not Kabbalah soil, it's Yira, awe. It's Yira. Yira and Kabbalah soil are 2 different worlds. I'm going to allow you, Mashpiyim, to explain that to you at length. But Bekitzer, Kabbalah soil, and by the way, Kabbalah soil, see, we always learned in yeshiva, so the narische Kabbalah soil, there's foolish Kabbalah soil, was the klugig Kabbalah soil. Chabad is klugig Kabbalah soil. Chabad's Kabbalah soil is not foolishness. It's deep. It's very deep. I understand. I feel. The person, and nevertheless, you commit beyond feeling and intellect. That's called healthy Kabbalah soil, reiche Kabbalah soil. Foolish Kabbalah soil, yeah, you shake your head like a tzig, like a goat. Yeah. Okay. It's also important. It's also important, but you don't need Chabad for that. Anyway, it's a different topic. No lectures tonight. Farbrengen. So, Yira is a different thing. Fear, awe, reverence. It's a different tnuah. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya opens up for us, Pashut, a gateway to healthy living. And I say this because I heard this with Reb Yoel. I mean, everyone will say, well, I know it from Tanya. Thank you very much. You've heard of the Sefer Noam Elimelech. You've heard of the Sefer Shem Shmuel, the Sachachover. Moira Nayim from the Chernobyl. Tell me, these Svarim, these Chassidus books, how are they structured? They're structured on the Parsha, primarily. As far as I know, there are only 2 Svarim that are not structured, Chassidus Svarim, on the Parsha. One is Sur Marav Aseitei from the Zidishover Tzaddik, but it's very Kabbalistic, very Kabbalic. And the only other Sefer is Sefer Atanya. The Tanya is a systematic guide from self to world to Avodah and all the ideas that the Alter Rebbe discusses in Tanya. You won't find that any other Chassidus Sefer in such a structured way. Right? So the Sefer HaTanya is a gold mine. Mamash a gold mine. I don't have my book here, but I wrote a book called Tanya on mental health. Everyone today is talking about mental health. Like we were machadish something here. My dear friends, mental health is as old as the creation of the world. And I took one or two ideas per chapter of the 53 Prokim to show a little insight how the Alter Rebbe would look at, let's say, schizophrenia. Or how the Alter Rebbe would look at guilt, loneliness, depression, melancholy, etc. The Sefer HaTanya is not made just for Lubavitcher Chassidim. Sefer HaTanya is made for every Yid. One of the things, I have a koilel in Bet Shemesh, in Eretz Yisrael, Ramat Bet Shemesh. I teach online. My Talmidim. Started in 2017-18. At that time, I went back and forth 8 times. We set it up, and they also learned Nigla and Rambam. So there was a Rav. If you look at the art scroll, Shas, you'll see a name there, Reb Chaim Malinowitz, Reb Chaim Zev Malinowitz. I knew Reb Chaim Zev Malinowitz, Oliver Sholem. He was a goyin, off in the cup. And he was the chief editor of the Shas. So he had a shul in Ramat Bet Shemesh. When we made the koilel, I thought, once a week it would be nice to bring a Rav, a speaker, kashrus, something to give the Talmidim. And when I'm talking about Talmidim, I'm talking about middle-aged to older adults. It wasn't a koilel like we're paying Jungelite. It was people who either were semi-retired, retired, or they worked American hours so they could learn in the morning. And we learned from 10 to 1. So I invited Reb Chaim Zev, and it happened to be around Yutas Kislev. And he spoke about Yutas Kislev, and I said, Rabbi Malinowitz, and he's a Litvak. Like, I'm happily surprised. So he says, let me tell you. But he didn't tell me then. He told me Gimel Tammuz, that same year. And what happened? First, in November, December, when he spoke for us, he also said, I want you to give a Tanya shir in my shul. I said, okay, not a problem, once a week. But I want you to prepare a course syllabus. I said, what? I said, that sounds like a Chabad house outreach type of program. He said, no. I want people to know what you're going to teach. So I did it. He paid on his own for a full-page ad in the local newspaper for this Tanya shir. I'm like, this is a Litvisher Rav. So I'm asking myself, what is it about this man that he's so engaged in publicizing the Shir Tanya? So when it came Gimel Tammuz, and I saw that he was so ungvarm to Lubavitch, to Chabad, to Chassidus, I said, Rabbi Malinowitz, Gimel Tammuz that year was on Shabbos. I said, would it be possible to say a few words about the Rebbe, etc., Friday night between Kabbalah Shabbos and Mincha? He said, sure. Now, I was by myself there. My wife stayed back home. And Hadlokas Neidas, the Rav here, how do you do Hadlokas Neidas, a single man, Kabbalah Shabbos, whatever. So I asked Rabbi Malinowitz, as a Talmud Chochem. And he says to me, let me worry about those things. I'll take care of that. You come and speak. And he says, not only do I want you to speak at the regular minyan, but there's an early minyan, I want you to speak then too. So I said, but I can't light the candles, and there'll be Shabbos and Magansin and Mises. I Ken Epslen, Kenach, you know what I mean? So I also knew about this issue. So he says, I'll worry about it, not you. You have to speak twice for both minyanim about the Rebbe. And then it came time, and this was already Shabbos day between Mincha Ma'ariv. It worked the way it works. I don't know how it's here in Montreal, but by the Litvische over there in Eretz Yisrael, they go home for Shalosh Shudas. They don't have Shalosh Shudas in shul. So, as the last Kaddish is said, he gives a clap off the table, off the bima. He says, Rabbi Isai, no one is to leave shul. And the way I just said it, that's the way he said it. No smile, no one is to leave shul. And I want to tell you, Chevra, everyone listened. I saw it. 80 people were there for Mincha. Not one of the people opened the door to go out because the Rav said, I think it's a lesson for us. We have our Rav here. I'm not joking. It's not a joke. A Rav says, Stas Teir, it's Halik. Anyway. And then he quotes the Gemara in Beya. He gives them Musar. If you walk out now, you're leaving the world of truth for Chaya for temporary life. And the Gemara says over there in Beya, a very sharp Lashon. I don't want to repeat it, a very sharp thing. And then he says to them, Rabbi Isai, we have someone here who's going to speak about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then he says, why am I letting him speak? Why am I letting him speak? So Litvish Shul, it's not our minhagim. Why am I letting him speak? And he says like this. I had 3 people who were madrich me. In Halacha, it was Rabbi Isha Feinstein. In Gemara, it was Rabbi Abba Berman, who was a Shanghai Talmud from Mir, a great Talmud Chacham, a Goin. And in Ashkofa, he said, he didn't say Chassidus. I think he said Ashkofa, it was Rabbi Yoel Khan. And I'm listening. What? He says, when I was in Muncie in the Koil of Tziyonim, Rabbi Yoel would come Thursday nights and give a shir Tanya in Muncie. Rabbi Simcha Werner, had a shir. But Rabbi Abba Berman didn't allow the Talmidim who wanted to learn Tanya with Rabbi Yoel to go at 8 o'clock because they have to say the yeshiva till 9:30. So Rabbi Yoel waited. And he started a shir at 9:30, 10, which went to 12 at night. And I attended that shir for 4 years. 4 years. He is my Rebbe. He is my teacher in Hashkafa. And I was waiting for the day, listen, when a student of Rabbi Yoel would approach me. This is what he said. And I would roll out the red carpet. It happens to be I was that student. And that's why Rabbi Dauphin is going to speak about Gimel Tammuz. Rabbi Isai, the world is waiting for us to share and teach Chassidus. Right here, in the Yeshiva Gedolah, the Yeshiva Gedolah, and all around, I promise you, if the right person, and maybe there is a shir, but talking about the inyan, the concept, to share with the Olam the jewels of Chassidus, Mevart, people are waiting today. Last week, there was a Shabbaton in Eretz Yisrael, outside Emale Adumim, of an organization that's called Mayone Yisrael. Streimlich. You know how many people attended? 1,500 men and women. Rabbi Isai, Chassidus is, as we say, a matbeya hamaleches. It's a current exchange that everyone's looking for. You just have to be ma'ir them. The Alter Rebbe, the Bala Elul of Chavdalet Tevis, is waiting for us. Our Rebbe is waiting for us to do these things more and more. People are thirsty, mamish thirsty to learn Avot Chassidus. And today, with all the apps and the schmaps and the cell phones, they can learn and teaching Chassidus on the phone, on the computer, and in so many different ways. But that is not Valenton. You have to just want to do it. What did we learn last week in Parshas Shmois? Nirpim atem irpim. Rebel, you remember the Rebbe's Fabring? I remember like it's ringing in my ears here. The Rebbe was screaming one Shabbos. Stop and remember. Nirpim atem nirpim. You're lazy. Ihr feilt sich. You could do it, but you're lazy. In 1986, my wife was coming back pregnant with my only and first son, my first child. In California, in Marin County, north of San Francisco, we were on Shlichus at the time. She's driving, a drunk driver being chased by the police at 90 miles an hour, goes into our brand new Toyota Corolla. She spins around twice from lane number 1 to lane number 4, takes off her belt, puts her sheitel on, and looks up. Am I still here? Yeah, I'm still here. The Rebbe was Fabringen that night, Zion Cheshvan, look it up. I went to Rabbi Reichik, a very good friend of Rabbi Greenglass. I said, Rabbi Reichik, he was my Mashpi. I said, Rabbi Reichik, vos meintus? You know, the Polish they speak. Vos meintus? What does this mean? What am I to learn from this? My wife's a good woman. We just got married. We're having a child. What does God want? You're allowed to ask. And Rabbi Reichik said to me, Ich kann dir nicht antworten. I can't answer you. Fragen Rebbe. Ask the Rebbe. So I did. I wrote a letter, put in some tzedakah, sent it off. And I didn't really expect an answer. But one day in January, I look into my post box. There was a letter from the Rebbe. The letter should be well. The letter was to me, but addressing my wife's pregnancy and have a healthy delivery and all that. It was sent out late. Should have came much earlier. And the Rebbe writes, Nun Beis. And this is something the Olam doesn't know. He writes to me, P.S. Ha'hayro mehama'ura. The lesson from what you wrote to me about the car crash, the speed, he doesn't go into details. Mehama'ura. Because I wrote the Rebbe about the experience. What happened, the Me'ura. Goydel inyan hazrizus bechol inyonei toiv. He didn't say bechol inyonei toiv mitzvahs. How great is alacrity, zrizus, in all matters of goodness. And then he quoted the Rashi in Parshas Mishpatim. Not that you be, God forbid, sick and God will heal you, but sickness won't come upon you. The Goydel Inyan Tzedakah, Askar al Siyan, right? The Rebbe says, alacrity, Schnellkeit, no kratzing. What are you kratzing for? What are you pushing it off for? For morgen. Heint, hayem la seisam. Hayem la seisam. Today you have to do it, not tomorrow. I'll get to it. I'll think about it. Mendel once told me, this is in Los Angeles, we were bucking him. He was there for Shabbos. And he says, Du weißt, was ist die größte Klippe in America? You know what's the biggest Klippe in America? Mind your own business. I'm going to say something to David. He's going to say, mind your own business. Like, who are you to tell me? Mind your own business. Says Rebendel, das ist Klippe. He says, bei uns in Russland, bei uns in Russia, If someone answered mind your own business, he got a frask. You kicked them out. What mind your own business? You're in an army? You're in the Chassidish army of Chabad Lubavitch? And you say mind your own business? Shame on you. Shame on you. The whole idea of Chabad is Bruderschaft, as we wrote in the flyer, togetherness. Shlomo Schwartzel Hashem told me in 1972, him, Kunin, Levitansky, and Stillman, 3 out of the 4 already Nelam Emes. They had one car in the driveway of 741 Gailey Avenue, Westwood, Chabad House, the first Chabad house on campus. So I asked Shlomo, how did you guys manage? Everyone needs a car to go here, there. So he said, I'll tell you. The car was in the basement, in the garage. The keys never left the ignition. When Kuna needed it, he started the ignition. Levitansky needed it, he started the ignition, right? When I needed it, Schwartz says, I started the ignition. And when Stillman needed it, he started the ignition. It's not my car. It's our car, meaning Chabad's car, the Eberster's car, Chassidus' car. Rabbi Say, there's so much Gashmias. And Baruch Hashem is Gashmias. And there should be more Gashmias. But we have to use the Gashmias richtig. The Alter Rebbe and Tanya, if you learn Tanya, Liebe de Nafshe, you really take it seriously. And you think, says in the Chassidish Sfarim, a gewaltige Wort. Yaakov, who does he love? He loves Rachel and he hates Leah. You know, there was stated in the Shem Shmuf, in the Sachachav, another Sfarim. What does it say? Leah is machshava and Rachel is dibur. We love to speak and we hate to think. Chabad's all about thinking. They would say in Rusland, how do you know, right? You know how they called informers in Rusland? I heard this from Tzvi Tzatzkitz Olav Shalom. Schmeckers. Was haben sie gerufen? Schmeckers? Because these guys were smelling who is a frum Yidl in the Choral Shul in Moscow and in Leningrad with a Bardem Payas. Reb Zalman Serebransky was this close to being another victim like Chonim Marozov and Raskin. In 1938, he would have never came back. There was a Yid Shul dressed with a Lange Kapotte, a Lubavitcher, Nebuch. And he was Nebuch, an informer. And Zalman was about to speak to them, and his friend said, Zalman, sag nicht kein Wort, shut your mouth. Schmeckers. They're there to smell who is a chassid and to rat on them to the KGB. So, the idea of togetherness, to break the klippa, to use Gashmi as the right way. And mind you, for the sake of the record, the Alter Rebbe wanted the Tsar to win, not Napoleon. His contemporaries wanted Napoleon. Why? Emancipation, freedom, Gashmias. It was the Alter Rebbe who said no. So you ask yourself a question. What do you mean the Alter Rebbe wanted we should live in dire poverty? Chas v'sholem. But the Alter Rebbe saw that if it's only Gashmias, it's going to lure you away and there'll be a breakdown. So L'chaim, the Eibusha help us. And first of all, everyone here, all of us together, say L'chaim for all the Yidden that need the Refuah Shleimas, the Gashmias, Nechama, and everyone else, Ben Miriam, Ben Bela, etc. And those that need better parnasa, the Eibusha showered them with a sach parnasa. And Yiddish Chassidish nachas from children, grandchildren, shidduchim. Today I spoke, Rabbi Avram invited me to the seminary. So the first task, Avram, I spoke a little about the Alter Rebbe. Then I saw some of the girls walking out. So I had to make a quick left, you know. I started to speak about Shidduchim. They all were there and just listening and thinking. I told them a word. I'm going to say it now, even though maybe it's not for Chassidish bringing aber the Alter Rebbe, but I'll leave it up to the Alter Rebbe. I'm not going to say who. It was a Chassid, a Russian Chassid in Crown Heights, with a Leingeweißer board and a real Chassidish Yid. He goes over to his grandson, who's a friend of some of us here, and he says, so-and-so, it's time for you to marry. You're looking for a shidduch. I want you to find, and I'll say it nicely, a pretty woman. And the grandson looks at the Zayda and he says, Zayda, was weißt du wegen pretty women? Okay, what do you know about pretty women? I thought you know how to check eggs and salad and frimme meisers. And the Zayda said, you're right, my dear grandson. I don't know about pretty women. You know what I know? I know you. I know you, and I know was lick eating cup. And you need a pretty woman. Everyone has to know themselves, you know? You have to know yourself. Don't fool yourself. Elichaim Karlbach, Reb Shlomo Karlbach's brother, verbringt with us in Los Angeles. And one of my chaverim was smoking. So it's bad enough that you're smoking at a fabring, and in those days, I guess it was accepted. But he's making circles. You know how you make the circles with the smoke? And he's sitting there and making these circles, and Elichaim is fabringing, and he's a chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and it platzt. He can't take it. And he screams out, Scheite! You fool! Das tust du bei a Verbringen? Lubavitcher Chassidim, and he said, the erste Sache hat mir ausgelernt, the first thing I was taught after I came from Lakewood in 1944 was get rid of your Scheite. L'chaim, Rabbi Zirkin, spielt noch ein Niggin? Chaim, L'chaim. Chaim. Can spielen dem Niggin von Gershom Mendel? I like that Niggin. Nu, wie geht der Niggin, nu? Wo ist Hirschel Raskin? Ma, hey, aber who kennst? Play. Ha, ho, na, 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 no. Ba, Schäfer Gadoi, oh, I've been Eretz Ashu, Ani Dochim Eretz Mitzrayim, Ani Dochim Eretz, Rachavu Hashem Bihada, Ani Aloyim v'hoyo b'yem ahu. Sing zusammen. V'hoyo b'yem ahu. Yitoka b'shofar gadol. Yitoka b'shofar gadol. Oiv di meyeretz nashu, ani dochim beyeretz Mitzrayim, ani dochim. Ovom na 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 na, diri na 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 na. I'll get my paar minut, Shane. You want to sing this and knock them? So, I grew up, is Avram, is Lison a Lison, as a Neinakul from the Shleim Chayim. Shleim, the tale of Maisa from the Shleim Chayim that I heard from my father. My father was a Talmud by Reb Shlomo Chaim from 1950 to 58, before he came to Reb Nissen, and then he came to America. Before I forget, I must say a great hello to my two Mechutonim, Reb Shaya Denberg and Reb Yosef Volansky. I don't know if they're here, but they are my Mechutonim, and we recognize you and we love you. Anyway, listen to this story. So, in those days, in the yeshiva, many Bochurim were not from the Lubavitcher backgrounds, like my father. We came from Vishnitzer background, Vishnitz Hasidim. The Vishnitzer Rebbe was in Bnei Brak. There was also the Seret Vishnitzer Rebbe, I think, was in Tel Aviv. The Heilige Belzer Rebbe was between Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim, right? And Bochurim, who didn't come from the background of Lubavitch, wanted to go to a Tish. Now, the fact is that Reb Shlomo Chaim worked very hard together with the other Mashpiyim to instill in the Bochurim Chabad. It's a Lubavitcher yeshiva. So, this was a constant, Avram, this was a constant discussion at the Farbrengens of Reb Shlomo Chaim. The Meile of Chabad. Reb Shlomo Chaim said he came from Koidenov. His father was not a Lubavitcher Chassid. His father was a Koidenover Chassid. He was a great tzaddik. A Polish Chassidus Chassid, Koidenov. He was known as a Baal Meifus, a Koidenover Rebbe. So Reb Shlomo Chaim said that someone came to the Mashpia in Lubavitch. He didn't say if it was Reb Groinem, Reb Shilim, whoever it was, Rashbatz, Reb Michal der Alter, whoever it was, and said, Ich will gehen her in dem Koidenover Rebbe. I want to go to the Koidenover Rebbe. I hear he's a big tzaddik. I want to go. So the Mashpia said, I'll let you know in a few days. Now you know what that means, right? Basically, I don't want you to go. Comes back in another few days. Mashpia, ich will gain some Koidenover. Pushes them off again. A third time, he doesn't push them off anymore. And he says, go, Ken's gain. But listen to this. He says, there's dorten gain. It's a little sharp, okay, but it's a Farbrengen, so take it the right way. Werd dich verloren, don't lose your head, okay? He says, there's dorten gain. You're going to go to Koidenov, and you'll see that is a Rebbe, is a tzaddik. He's a Rebbe. Of course he's a Rebbe, but it's Lubavitch. No. You'll see that for yourself. Then he says, you look a little, I'm sorry if I tell you, it was a bris. It was the punchline. It was a bris he wanted to go to, I'm sorry, with the Koidena and the Kraven of Rebbe Shul. So he says, you can go to the bris. Aber erstens wirst du sehen, als ist ein Rebbe, aber, you know. Then you'll find out the bris is nicht kein bris. And then you'll find out that maybe he wasn't even a zocher. In English, it doesn't go. I would have to say it in Yiddish. But here's the point. We walk around with fantasies. Meretz Chaim, we convince ourselves, this is the Rebbe, that's the Rebbe. If you're not on the Messiah Rabbi Yoel's Sefer that he allowed to publish, Darkei Rabbi Seinu Nisiyenu, he chose the name. He didn't write the Sefer. He had a great writer in Eretz Yisrael, and he looked over it and he approved it, but he didn't write every line, every word. But the name he chose, what's the name? Darkei Rabbi Seinu Nisiyenu. We have a Messiah. We have a derech. You find out the Rebbe is nicht kein Rebbe, the priest is nicht kein priest, and he's not a zocher. In other words, you got it all wrong. You have it all wrong. The young people here, the Bocherim, the future of our people, the moisters that Reb David and Reb Avram brought me to today, to look at the future, that's very important. That's the ikr. And we need to share with them our Messiah. That's why when Reb David invited me, I said, I want to fabring, and I want to give drushes to talk about the Messiah of Lubavitch. Rabbi Greenglass was a Yid that lived with the Messiah. Rabbi Greenglass came from Alexander Chassidim. My Zayda came from Alexander Chassidim on my mother's side. He was a aristocratic boy. He played the fiddle. He wore a gray kapota, right? He came from a Gvirische home. He was no slouch. He was no schlemiel. He makes a transition in his life. He changes completely, becomes a Lubavitcher Chassid, opens up a whole world, a new world, the Messiah. We need to find out what is our Messiah. We need to live with that Messiah. What is our Messiah? A Chassidish Nigun, a Perek Tanya, a Lekutei Sichos, a Mivtzoyim. That's our Messiah. And when you go with the Messiah, you can't go wrong. You won't go wrong. If not today, tomorrow, it's going to come back in a positive way. There's no question about it. I've seen it. You've seen it over and over. But you got to stick to the tradition. Years ago, they came out with Lubavitch Light. Many years ago. And I said, Chabad Light, sorry. Thank you for the correction. I said, what is it, light mayonnaise? You got regular mayonnaise and light mayonnaise. There's one Chabad. You do a little more, you do a little less. The Rebbe told me when I came to Marin County in 1984, and I saw a flyer that my chaver, Barry Scheinman, Benjamin Scheinman from Chicago, put out. His face on a flyer, and on top it said, I am not Reform. I am not conservative. I am not Orthodox. I am Chabad. And then in smaller words, this is at the philosophy of Chabad, Avos Yisrael, etc., right? And I saw this. I said, this is a great way to introduce myself to the 19,000 Jews of Marin County, most, of course, hardly any from Jews. Great introduction. I printed up 500 beautiful postcards. I was going to do a mass mailing, but I have a boss. He's called the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So I sent it in to him as a duch. A few hours went by. Benjamin Klein calls me. Did you send in a flyer to the Rebbe? I said, yes. He said, the Rebbe wrote 10 lines of an answer to your flyer. I said, what? And Bekitzer, the Rebbe wrote to me, what you're writing can be ma'oder, old machloikis. And therefore, don't say that. Number two, by saying I am not Reform, I am not conservative, I'm not Orthodox, you're giving in and saying there are three categories, Reform or you're not. But Sefaran, it exists. That itself is already chiluk ideas, pilug, division. And the Rebbe said, if you need to talk, if you need to speak about this, do it in talking. Don't write it this way. I took the 5,000 cards. I had my garbage can. They went right into the garbage. The Avos Yisrael, the sensitivity the Rebbe shows us, So the one Yid, there's only one Lubavitch. There's no light and colors. We always had some people that were more Hasidic, less Hasidic, etc., etc. But don't formalize Chabad into the real Chabadniks and the lightweight Chabadniks. The Rebbe never, ever spoke that way. Never, ever thought of that, such a thing. What's the story that they just publicized in COL, or one of the members, or Jem? Kum, aber kum, right? The chassid says, I'm dirty, I'm schmutzig. I remember, Rabbi Bell gedenkst, the person who brought to the Rebbe the dollars during the week when the Rebbe gave the dollars, remember who it was? Sidney Hecht, Sholem Hecht, the youngest brother of the Hechts. You know how he came in? I saw this every Fabrengen. He came in with a sweater, with a gartel on a sweater, and he ran in. And he gave the Rebbe crispy new dollars. He had a connection with the bank over there on Coney Island Avenue. Kum, ober kum. Come. Now, should you lechatchila come without a hat and jacket, a kapot, you're going to the Rebbe? Of course not. But don't let that, the nekuda ikris of the connection to the Rebbe, to the Tzaddik, to Chabad, is the same for all of us. And I promise you, when our youth will hear this message and see it, they'll come out solid. You know, Hashem benched me with 1 boy and 6 girls. And at my table, we spoke about everything. And we dialogued. And guess what? We disagreed sometimes. Strong disagreements. But Baruch Hashem, every one of them is a Lubavitcher, is frum, is connected. Does everyone have my ideas? Absolutely not, and I don't want them to. Alter Rebbe in Pedig Beis, Chavdala Tevis, what does he say then in Pedig Beis? The neshama that a person has is not up to the parents. The manifestation and development of the neshama, that's why there needs to be Kiddush Avim, etc. But the neshama itself, Hashem gives a person the neshama. We have to give hadracha, and we teach. When you show your children and grandchildren and friends and colleagues that there's acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you go along for the ride and you give in to every narishkeit. When my daughter came down once a Shabbos in jeans, she wants to go out. I said, you're not going out. It's Malava Malka. You're going out. You don't want to wear Shabbos dress? Okay, we'll compromise. Jeans? Matzah Shabbos? It's Malava Malka. So let's make a compromise. And it worked. You don't have to give in to everything. What do you stand for? We're parents. I always told my kids, I'm not your friend. I'm your father. I'm not your friend. I'm your father. I love you. And I want a dialogue. But I'm a father. I'm not your friend. We sometimes get very antsy and like, what is she going to say? What is he going to say? What is Geshenda? What's going to be and all that? Sorgt sich nicht. Gam zu Yavor, right? Gimel Zayin Yud on the stecken, right? You're walking around with a stick. Gimel Zayin Yud. Gam zu Yavor. This will pass. Stand up for your principles. You're a Lubavitcher. Be'emes. We're Lubavitcher. We're Chassidim. It's not a time to give up the Messiah. On the contrary. And the Rebbe teaches us. Tell you another story. The women over there are going on. Tafshin Memhei. First time I came back from Shlichus to the Rebbe for Yud Shvat, which, by the way, Yud Shvat night, those of us that were there know this. Those that weren't, hopefully, can't feel it, understand it. When the Rebbe came into Ma'ariv, you couldn't hear a pin drop. He talked about Yira. Wow. It felt Yiridik. And I see here by Mashpir Reb Yoel, and he greets me with a smile like he always did, sticks out his hand to say Shalom Aleichem to me. And after that, he becomes very serious, and he says to me, "No," but without the smile. "No, I want to drop." Standing with 5,000 people in 770, huge fat, waiting for the Rebbe to come down, and Reb Yoel is looking right at me. There's no room to move, and he says, "No." I say to Reb Yoel, "Was is? What's going? What did I do?" He says, "No. Recht über links. Right button over left." I had my left button over my right. Now, I want you to understand the story, because I don't believe many of you understand the story because you didn't know him. Reb Yoel, on one hand, wasn't someone who, he made a big issue of frumkeit. He never spoke about frumkeit to us in the Farbrengens. But he himself was a very frummer. I'll give you another example and go back to this. When he came to Shir in Ocean Parkway, David, maybe you remember this. He would give a Tanya Shir Thursday nights. We were younger Bocherim, and the older Bocherim were the big Kananim, Tzvi Greenblatt, Shalom Chartonev, and all those Chevra were older Bocherim who understood well, and he gave deep shiurim, 2-hour shiurim in Tanya. When he would come in the winter like now, he would wear a sweater under his jacket. Reb Yoel to his last day did not put on a kapota during the week. You know that, right? So he took off his left, and then he took off his left sweater, and then he did his right, etc., like it says in Shulchan Aruch. And we were cracking up. Reb Yoel Khan is thinking about left and right like, I thought he's supposed to be in the heavens with Ak and Kaidum Atzimtzum and Dargas and Sfiras. But his father, Fola Khan, was the Yid of Shemayim. There was a Yid here, Noske Gorari, Reb Nosson Gorari, here from Reb Nosson Gorari, my Chaver, Reb Yankee Winner, who's his son-in-law, told me that Reb Nosson Gorari said, "Was means the Yoel is given Mashahu." You think Yoel was something? He was. Fol is given Mashahu. His father was something special. Yoel noch Chassidus. I know Chassidus. Noske noch Chassidus. Very nice. We talk about Yerushalayim and Bruderschaft and Ava and Lubavitch. Fol had it. Anyway, so Rabbi Yoel tells me right over left. So that's why I never thought that Rabbi Yoel Khan is worried about my buttons on my jacket. He has nothing better to think about than my buttons. I think such a thing would be pasik for Rabbi Glinglass. It was a makubal. Right over left, left over right is gvur over chesed, like that, these are rights and stuff like that, right? The Rebbe, by the way, spoke about it by Barenga once. So Rabbi say, we can do sitzen a ganze Nacht, and we could do that if you want. But it seems like Reb David wants to sing the Dalit Bovis. He has a Seder, so we have to concede to the wishes of the host. And then maybe we continue. But in the Kudus Advarim the point is, that's Chav Dalit Tevis. It's a Zman Miyuchad. It's a special time. We need to have Chassidish Farbrengens, real Chassidish Farbrengens, more and more. Not speeches. Farbrengens, unfortunately, have become speeches. No speeches. What did the Rebbe say, Damos? No speeches. No speeches. Farbrengens, not speeches. Wir sitzen zusammen. Wir sagt L'chaim, wir sind Tanigin, etc. L'chaim, the Rebbe should help us. We have only Psuras Tevis Bekolin Yonim. Mashiach wird sicher kommen, and it's going to be now, and we will be part of it, in Mirz Hashem. L'chaim. Oh, Reb Moshe Chanovitz, how are you? Pleasure.
Yasher Koyach Gadol to Reb Chaim.
Leaving tomorrow morning.
We're going to do the niggin of the Dalet Bavis. It's only appropriate Chavdalet Tevis.
Charaton, Rabbi Charaton.
Chassidim say that when you sing the niggin of the Dalet Bavis, first of all, you're not allowed to sing it at any time you want, only on specific occasions. And when you sing the niggin of the Dalet Bavis, it's azevi migita pan to the Alter Rebbe. So whatever anybody needs, I want to give a bracha in the schus of the niggin of the Dalet Bavis, in the schus of the Alter Rebbe, Zolaven ge'emfet. And if I could ask all the Kahanim and Arav Bel Beresham to give Birchas Kahanim, and we'll sing the Dalet Bavis. And whoever needs a shidduch should get a shidduch. Whoever needs children in the right way should be children in the right way. Whoever has problems with parnasa should have parnasa barchava. Whoever has a problem with gezunt should have refuah shleima. And the ikah should be the refuah for the oilam with Mashiach now.
Amen.
The Dalet Bavis. Hi la da, ya 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 mama ma ya 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 da 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 ya 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 ya. Mama, ay, 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 la da,
Ay, 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 ay,
ya, 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 ya. The Dalet Bavis by the Rebbe in Farbringen. Alicia, take it away. Everyone together, a pon to the Alter Rebbe. Ay, 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 ay. There's a short video how the Rebbe explains the difference between a Jewish leader and a Rebbe, a Nossi. And in this video, it goes in hand with the parshas that we are learning that Moshe was Reyet Soin, that Moshe cares for every single Yid, a Nossi cares for every single Yid.
Kakol ist die Gefühle von einem Hogas Nossi, Mustam a Godel mi Yisroel, Shekol sein a Godel bi Yisroel und Godel Lamisosi shel Dover, Shma Yisroel, Adonai Eloheinu. Und bei ihm soll nie sein der Ring von Yisroel, dass Shekol sein Iden, was hat mit sich nicht asches. יברך לך אדוני וישמרך, יאיר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקו. is Adonai
בשעת דורת רצח ונענושי בישראל, alle Unionen, was fehlt, konnte nicht vertragen, da soll nicht fehlen in kolamischomische Klubes. Und in der Ruhe besteht die Schlimmes an uns. Der Fuhl versteht mir nicht, der Gebel Achrei ist, was haben wir, die alle, was sie sein, was sie haben sicher gewählt und sie gefühlen sich bedeutet. Was das ist der Gebel, nicht nur die, was haben gesehen, der Chaim Chajot. Und die werden dämmel von dem Tee. Aber viele nicht nur die, was haben die Frau gesehen, der Chaim Chajot, die Klonus, was dämmel Doktor der Gebete, Schalmalis, Ideen, Schol Tzadikin, die bringt dann Rot, Teva, Bareva, was das in See gebet. Gott, du kannst doch aufrufen, Leachas Mann. Aber viele, die, was haben nicht sicher gewesen zu dem Bechaio, oder seien geboren geworden, Leachri ist auch Kusri. Es geht noch mit Linde Terosse, was wie Tere, das wie gerät früher in die Loschen Hero, als mit keine Herois Schulei, ist orthodox heißt eine Kusche, Durum Ruf, was man halt davon in die Terosse, die haben auch Geso, Kochol HaHerois, was Herois Heiso, Idos Yishulam, Leapeteri, Trachen im Rabin von Nossi Hadeh, וכלי קדוש השמוך עבור הזמן של זה, ברוכו לכל ערכות ביחד, לכל מביתם המצטרף להם מנפש ויד חוסר.
Talking about Iskashrus, my Shver would say, if you want that there should be a hazaza inside of you, rule number 1 is Kabbalah Sale. Kabbalas El, Esakeves Echot Tase Babeke, Esakeves Hasheni Tase Ben Arbaim. The idea of consistency, to be responsible, Kabbalas El. So let's come out of this Fabrengen with Kabbalas El. You may not be able to hear the words, it's technology of 30 years ago. Another thing that he mentions, in case it doesn't come out, is how when they ate supper, the size of the piece of meat was the size of an olive, a kazayas. And when they went to the mikveh, the walk there took 45 minutes, and they chazed a maimer. But the ikr of this word, of this Fabrengen, what my Shver was saying is, Kabbalas oil is a keli for a hazaza. You want to change? Start with Kabbalas oil.
Gesagt, mit mir Kabbalah sei. Das Teil, heute ist schwer. Tut doch mal auf mal auf. Also ich habe den Scheiß, auf den du noch dabei. Das wird Kabbalah sei. Kabbalah sei, ich kann ja. Okay, Kabbalah. Reiches Arbeiter, wie soll ich sagen? Reiches Arbeiter, wie ich eine ganze Bier da war. Ich habe Reiches Arbeiter, was ich habe, was ich habe. Kabbalah sei. Als een had hij gewoon gezegd, dan moet ze daar kelen. Dan moet ze daar kelen. Später, so ich kenne auch mal hergisch, nach 5 Tagen. Teuer, nach weiter Stille, in früher jeden Tag, aber immer 5 Tage an. Viel in dem Achai ist ein Geschmack. Aber auch eben hätte ich schon mit der Brauch gesagt. Ich kenne es an. Kein Ringen. Zat der Rachtes. So Hashem, was es haben dort. Wie mit ihnen es waren Rachtes. In unserer Zeit, es eine Rachtes, die dort waren. Ich denke einmal, als man was gegessen, der Batok. Bei uns gewesen, da bin ich einmal wieder auf meine Minute. Also, der Wut ist dort. Dinner, als ich jetzt mal top. Sehr, sehr. Ich bin ein Koster Michael. Look, das ist auch gleich noch Vokabel. Das ist aber bei der Arbeit. In solche Gelegenheit gefleisch. Das ist gefleisch gewesen. Ich kenne das nicht. Ja, You have to cook with a telescope. Then the voices. You don't have to place. Sie nicht immer gesagt. Man ist das auch ungeschwommen, das ist als Eides, als Erzählung, aber als ich erst weiß ich. Aber da fahrt man noch breit gewesen, breit gewesen, oder breit, lächeln, eine Schieße, und wir werden bereit gewesen. Aber das ist man spricht nicht verachtet. Weiter wie Kalle nach der Katte im Bürgerlos. Ich bin im Vater jemand leiden, ich bin der Kalle. Da ganz schön zu essen. Nee, dat is ook de fout. Nee, dat gaat het niet. Zo gaan we het gelernt. Zoals gekauft heel gehad. Van de tijd dat zie je ze nou gesessen, gelernt, hadden. Ja, dat is een laag binnen rechts. Zijn we maar nog gehad. Ik ga niet. Ze geen wasser, en geen liefde, geen beetje.
When they had to go to the mikveh, 45 minutes. The mikveh was on the other side of the city. What did they do on the way? They chazed a mimer. The Rebbe said.
No? Der Eis hat sich geriet. Ich habe noch kein Winter. War Teich, ein größter Teich. Ja, ein Teich. Was ist doch Eis? Das ist davon. Und der Eis ist sehr stark. Am Morgen ist ein größer Frost. Der Eis ist so hoch, aber man kann doch mit der Flug.
In the middle of the winter, you could ride on the lake. And the Rebbe said, from Chazring Chassidus on the way to the mikveh, the ice started to break. Broke the ice.
Selbst wenn der Eis hätte funktionieren, es hätte ein bisschen zu schwimmen. Aber es geht noch auf in der Hartkeit, in der Verfrorenkeit. Es hätte ein bisschen weiter. Es ist gut, der Eis zu geben. Und der Rebbe hat mal gesagt, der Eis hat uns zu gehen. Die Woche. Von dem Achshavus, was trachten in Gas, kann man wissen, von dem Achshavus, was gehen, trachten in Gas, kann man wissen, was hat.
From the thoughts that a person has when he walks in the street, you could know what kind of a mensch he is.
No!
I did it all, ay, 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 I did it all, ay, 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 ay,
Hey, ay, 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 no! Hey, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Hey, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. So, Rabbi Cohen, Rabbi David asked me to tell over a story. How did I get here? You're wondering, how did I get to this Montreal in the freezing cold? Well, first of all, I have hundreds and hundreds of cousins in this community called the Dolphins. They're all my relatives, every single one. And the Freeds, and the Hopmans, and the list goes on. I don't know any of them, but they're all my cousins. In 1941, when the 9 Bacharim came here, my family were from the first supporters of Rabbi Kramer Oliver Sholem in the yeshiva. Charles Dolphin, Murray Dolphin, Mendy Dolphin. So we have a connection. My father came here, and I think his name was Rabbi Avram Tenenhaus. My father came off the ship, and his money was stolen. A Satmar Chassid, a famous, wealthy philanthropist, Getzel Berger, was on the ship, and he saw the way my father davened. He came out of Reb Shlomo Chaim, came out of Lud, he came out of the yeshiva, and he davened with kavana, he davened like a Chassidish bacher. And he said, and ordinarily I wouldn't give you any money, because you made a minyan of Fraya people, and to me they're goyim. But you made the minyan, and I saw the way you davened, and you have no money, I'm going to give you $5 and a bottle of Coke and some of my chicken. That's what he ate on the ship. And that's how he came to America. $5 in his pocket, because it was stolen. The money was stolen. And Getzelberger told him, I'm giving you this, but tonight with a condition that when you come to America, you must go see the Satmar Rebbe. My father said, you got a deal. My father's from Romania. Romanian Yidden, they got smarts. He'll deal with the Satmar Rebbe later. Now he needs the $5. But he did live up to the condition. He got a job in the Williamsburg in the Satmar bakery because he needed to make some money. He had no money. And who comes in? The Satmar Rebbe. That's how he saw the Satmar Rebbe. Another story. My father was in Frankreich on the way out of Eretz Yisrael. He stayed in 6 months till he got his visa. He got his, to come into America through Tels, through Rabbi Gifter, Rabbi Martha Gifter. Zalman Schneerson was a big askin, as you know, in Frankreich, in Paris. My father came to him, and he heard my father, and my father did well. And he said, I need a visa. I want to come into America. I want to see the Rebbe. I want to get married. I want to make some money. V'chulu. And so Reb Zalman Schneerson wrote to the Mordechai Gifter, can you give him a visa to come in? Affidavit, thank you. Affidavit. Rabbi Gifter saw the name, and he gave him. And when he came, my father it was very difficult for him to sit in yeshiva. He had severe stomach problems. And he was older, already 21. But Rabbi Gifter gave him the affidavit. So he took a plane from New York to Cleveland to tell Rabbi Gifter in a nice way, I love you, but I can't stay here and learn. Rabbi Gifter thought he's getting a new Talmud called my father's name, Dolphin. He swore him. He said, you lied to me. I thought it said Dolphon. Dolphon. There's a Sephardish guy. A Dolphon. You're a dolphin, and you're a Lubavitcher with a crooked hat. Go to the Rashag. You're not going to come take my affidavits that I need for Sephardish kids. My father said to Rabbi Gifter, I'm telling you the truth. I would love to sit and learn and stay here and learn in Cleveland and Tells, but I just can't. And I came to say thank you to you. So he went there to tell him thank you, knowing that Rabbi Gifter is going to give him over the head, which he did. And he went back. So I remember I was here maybe 20, 25 years ago, longer, and someone told me that the name of the property of the yeshiva, I think, was donated by a woman named, I think, Ida Bloomberg or something. She's a relative of the Denbergs. Ida Bloomberg. She's a relative of the Denbergs. Yes. And the mice of the story that was, I think, on Gem also, Yechidus, Frum, she wasn't Frum. So she said to the Rebbe, she Friedeke Rebbe. 1940s, like, you taking my money, you know what I mean, a donation. The Rebbe said the Friedeke Rebbe said, only God knows who's really Frum. What's Frum an acronym for? Davis, viel Risches und wenig, right? Mitzvahs. Viel Risches und wenig mitzvahs. Lots of evil, lots of bad, and a little mitzvahs. Frum. Expressions always said, frum via galach. Religious like a priest. That's frum. Let me tell you what frum is. I had a shver, his name was Reb Chaim Serebransky. He was a Russian chassid, emissary chassid, a Chassidish Yid in Melbourne. The first 29 years of his life, he was in Rusland. He once came to the Rebbe, and it was, I think, Chalamoid Sukkos. At that time, flying, probably the 1960s, early 70s. No, early 70s. And he comes, he's starving. He's been 36 hours on a plane, this plane by Indonesia and here and there. How he flew. Finally comes to 770. 2 in the morning, he comes in. It's dark. You can't imagine it, Chaver, right? 770 should be dark and quiet. It can't be, right? And those days, even in my days, at a certain time, the lights went off. There was one light left in the under the Weiberschule or somewhere else, you know. My shver comes in, and there's no one there except one bacher. That bacher was Reb Naftali, a Stulan Zohar Metaphor Shlema, who I think is related to the Cohns, right? They have married sisters. Tzemach Gerevich's daughters, 7 daughters. And he sees Naftali. Naftali is a Rushisher. He knew my shver. He's a Russian, Lubavitcher Chassid. And my shver says, Naftali, efshe hast epis zu essen. Maybe you have something to eat. I'm starving, you know. I haven't eaten. So my shver didn't eat on the plane. There's no sukkah. He didn't drink either. Naftali says, Reb Chaim, it's 2 a.m. 770 is shut, closed, dark. There's no one around. Let me see if I have something. And he comes back with stale bread. A loaf of stale bread. My shver looks at it and he says, Baruch Hashem. Listen to this, Chaver. Listen to this. He gives him the stale bread. My shver turns to Naftali and he says, Wo wascht man sich? Where do you wash? He says, over there in the corridor upstairs, right, there's a sink next to the yichud room. My shver starts going there to wash. And then he turns back around. He says, Oi, ich vergessen, I forgot. Wo is the Salz? Where is the salt? Because you're supposed to dip bread, not in mayonnaise, and not in tuna fish, and not in avocado, but in salt. Naftali wants to fall him. 2 a.m. I found you stale bread. There's nothing else to eat. And you want salt? In 770, salt? And he says to Mashver, Reb Chaim, I'm schuldig. Sorry, I don't have salt. Mashver takes the loaf of bread and gives it back to him. He says, thank you, but no thank you. He doesn't need it because he doesn't have salt. You talk about Yiras Shamayim? Yiras Shamayim? Who of us, starving after 36 hours on a plane, would turn down a piece of stale bread? We would probably turn it down because it's stale, but even if you didn't turn it down, you turn it down because you don't have a little salt, you got to be kidding. That's Yiras Shamayim. That's Lubavitch. That's Chabad. That's real Yiras Shamayim. Not fake bluff Yiras Shamayim. This is what we're made out of. This is who we are. This is what we need to aspire to. You know, it says in Chassidus, my mom talks about everything compared to the Eibush, there is nothing. Famous Chazal, the Maimorim, right? And I think about the story, it's like, everything I do is nothing compared to a Yid like this, who won't eat a piece of stale bread 2 a.m. because he doesn't have a little salt. That's Yiras Shamayim. And you need to think about this. You need to think about, where is our Avodas Hashem? So we talk about, I was speaking to the Bacharim, who was willing, I think, the Reb Hirschel's, or the other, or Reb Gershon's yeshiva, who was willing to give away their bed for a Neirich? So one of the Bacharim answered, I'll give it away, but he had a condition. No. No conditions. You have a guest, give him away your bed. Are you ready? Are you real about Achnosas Orchim? Or is it a Achnosas Orchim that's tailored to your ideas? You understand? So when we learn Chassidus, and this isn't Musar, we're Chassidim. This isn't Musar. This is healthy Chassidus. To really look at ourselves and to see how small we are, how infantile we are, or in Yiddish, how garnished we are, yet we are everything. Because the Eibush says, I want you and I need you. So the Alter Rebbe, L'chaim. I'm going to take a story that I believe the Olam didn't hear. I heard this from Rabbi Yosef Segel of Yerushalayim, Rosh HaKoil, who told me he heard it from Moshe Yudel Reichman, who was Reb Zalman Havlin's Eidim. And he was a brother-in-law to Reb Alter Simchovich. I'm giving you the Shalshelis. Ish mi pi ish. The Alter Rebbe had a chassid, Reb Henich Shklover, Reb Henich Schick, right? Reb Pinchas Reizes. His name was Pinchas Schick from Shklov, whose father was Reb Henich, who was the second in command after the Vilna Gaon, by the Vilna Gaon. The Alter Rebbe, the Pinchas becomes a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He was a Litvisher, a Misnagid, and becomes a chassid. In those days, when you did that, they literally sat shiva for you. Arais from the. If you're going to join the Kat, the cult, Chabad, Lubavitch, Chassidus, out. The Pinchas is a geschworene chassid from Alter Rebbe. He becomes a chassid. You want to throw me out? Throw me out. 2 years go by. 2 years. He hasn't seen his father hasn't seen him because he ostracized him. He threw him out. One day he's sitting in a park. Reb Henich walks by, and Pinchas is sitting and thinking Torah, thinking Chassidus. What does a chassid do when he goes to the like what Rabbi Greenglass said on the, thinks Torah. I myself saw the Rebbe walking home many times from 770 to his house. We accompanied him, and if you looked, the Rebbe was murmuring, verted. The Rebbe was saying Torah as he was walking in the street. The Pasha was fulfilled with the Friedrich Rebbe writes, not Yom Yom Taras Avir. He was a chassid. Kipshuta took the Friedrich Rebbe's words, Medaf Chazir and Torah Chassidus, as you walk in the streets of Montreal, Manhattan, Chicago, Indonesia, wherever you are. And the Rebbe did it, right? So the Pinchas is doing that, picks up his head, and he sees someone walking by, and it looks like his father. He hasn't seen him in 2 years. 2 years. And his father looks at him, and he sees what looks like his son, Pinchas. They come closer. They come closer. Are you Pinchas? Tata? Are you my tata? Are you my father? And they hug each other. And he sees a yid with a board and payas or a beard and payas, with a kapota, a chassid, a yid, a frum, and he says, I don't believe it. I thought you joined a cult and you became not religious, fry, and all that. You mean you're still religious? And not only, he says, yeah. So he says to him, Pinchas, who taught you to be frum and so frum? He says, my Rebbe. Your Rebbe? You mean the cult that you joined? He says, yes, my Rebbe, the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe. So he says, I have to see your Rebbe. If your Rebbe can make you such a yid, I have to see him. I want to talk with him. You understand? This is the second in command under the Goyim. So the Pinchas says, Eimal Ayor, once a year, the Alter Rebbe comes to Shklov. And by the way, the deepest Maimorim in Likutei Torah, in Arashir Hashirim, was said in Shklov. I heard this from Ele Matas, it was a big bucky, the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim. The deepest Maimorim in Likutei Torah are in Shir Hashirim. And where did the Alter Rebbe say them? In Shklov, Dafke in Shklov. Anyway. So, he says once a year, the Alter Rebbe comes to Shklov, because there is a shtibale, a Lubavitcher shtibel. That Moshe Rubin Shalom would live in this community, would say that the Lubavitcher shtibel in Slonim was called the Damske Shtibel. You know what Damske means? A damen, woman. The feminine Shtibel. You know, for the weaklings, for the females. A Shtibele, a shul, a grace shul with a big chandelier, with a grace Oren Kodesh. This is a shul. A Shtibel, a few benches and herring on the table and all that. Come on. So the Pinchas tells his father, the Alter Rebbe comes to our shtibel in Shklov, and he spends a Shabbos. And he says, Chassidus, my morim, Fabreins, Medaven, Bariches. It's what we call an Erlich Shabbos. It's an awesome Shabbos. It's not just a Shabbos. It's a Shabbos. Come Shabbos, spend Shabbos with us in Shklov, in the shtibel, and Motzei Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe gives yichidus to anyone that wants to come in to see the Alter Rebbe. Motzei Shabbos. You can start hanging. You can go in. He says, sure. Vayihi Hayoim, the Alter Rebbe came to Shklov, and the Henech Shklover is there, and he cannot believe what he hears and sees. The devotion, the Chassidishkeit, the Torah, the Negina, a real, authentic Chabad Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, he goes in and he says the following words to the Alter Rebbe. Rebbe, calls him Rebbe, Kableini tachas kinofecha. Receive me, accept me under your wings. In other words, I want to be your chassid. Now I'm going to tell you what the Alter Rebbe said, and I want you to think and listen to it with Chabad with your cup, okay? Don't listen to it. Don't hear it narrow. And I'll explain a little bit. The Alter Rebbe answers Reb Henech Shlover. Reb Henech, you want to be my chassid? You want me to accept you? A fine request, but I can't. Wow. Why not? Not because I'm a snagid, but the Alter Rebbe quoted, we don't say our nus is called Yotzres. The Polish and others, they say on the Dalit Parshas, they say special prayers called Yotzres, and also on the Shabbos before Shavuos. If you look it up in Siddur Yotzres Atfilas, it follows the Aleph Beis, and then there's Ois Tes. I'll quote to you what it says. Tes, Tit, Oilam Haba, Chasidim Menu or Mimenu Nitzmochim. What does it mean? What does Tit literally mean? In Parshas, now the Parshas? Cement, right? Tit. Oilam Haba, the world to come. Chasidim sprout forth from it. Very enigmatic. It makes no sense. Zot the Heilige Alter Rebbe, the Balo Elulav Chavdalet Tev, is the following taich. Tit also in Yiddish means a tegel, a dough, a tegale. Tit. There is a type of a dough, oilam haba, that's really the world to come. Oilam haba. Chasidim mimenu nitzmochim. Chasidim come out of this tegale. You know what that tegale is? The kichol and the little vodka l'chaim and the herring that you say l'chaim when you put someone's neshama at tikkun or at a fabrengen. And he says to Reb Henech, O Reb Henech isn't nicht gemacht geworden von dem Tegel. You're not cut out of this dough. Now, what does that mean? You can't become a Lubavitcher chassid if you weren't born in Neville or in Kremenchuk or in Lubavitch. No. Is your mindset, as we said earlier in the Mimer, the paradigm, is your paradigm the shtickl tegel, the chassidishkeit? You can sermonize and you can darshan and you could know, but if you don't have the chassidishkeit, the warmkeit of a little piece of herring with a little l'chaim, be it wine, be it vodka, be it scotch, toasting to someone for their neshama of the parent or a friend, etc., then you're not shaykh to it. Not that you, of course, you can do everything. The message is such a powerful, this story, to me, is a classic, important story of what Lubavitch is. What I saw by my shver, you know, he was a real Russian Lubavitcher chassid. What I saw by this yid is just this exact idea. Mamish. I'll give you an example. He was living the last 25 years of his life in Kronites, across 770. When there was Tishrei, he and his wife went to the Achnosis Orcham, I think to Mendel Hendel or that organization, and they offered to peel herrings and mices for hours, unsolicited. Why? So Bachram should have what to eat, so guests should have what to eat. Didn't make a rash, it wasn't on COL, it wasn't publicized. When he was in Australia, the Bacharim were shluchim there, I think there's Shmuel Kramer, I don't know if he's here, he told me, my shver had a car. Bacharim didn't have a car. The mikveh wasn't where they were at the yeshiva, the YG, the yeshiva in that area, they had to go. So my shver gave him the car. Without questions. You have insurance, you don't have insurance. You know how to drive, you don't know how to drive. Give him the car. They Bacharim have to go to the mikveh. Go. I'm not suggesting we do crazy, wild things. I'm not suggesting that. I'm talking about the attitude and the mindset. It's not my car. The keys never leave the ignition. The story I told you before with Shlomo Schwartz and the other shluchim in California. It's not mine. It's not mine. It's ours. And when we live this way and we feel this way, then we have chassidus. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, lived this way. Not in every situation. In every situation, he lived this way. You know, the Rebbe came from a place, Russia, hard times, difficult times. My wife Zayda Reb Zalman, who was the one who started the yeshiva and the meisters in Australia, many times he has probably 300 letters. You can make a whole sefer from the letters of the Rebbe to him and him to the Rebbe. Ganze Bichel. And many of those letters, he cries his heart out about situations on the ground. And look in the Igros Kodesh, for those that are printed there, the Rebbe says to him, always, cut out the Shborer Shchoira. The Rebbe's not talking to me, he's talking to Reb Zalman, who was born in 1904, 2 years after the Rebbe, who in Chatzah Feged in Tafresh Pei Hey said, come with me to the Frierdiker Rebbe in Leningrad. They were learning in Kharkov, in Rostov, I'm sorry. Come with me. And to the Rebbe, Reb Zalman said, I'm not ready. Can you imagine? You're offered a ticket in those days. Your mashpia, Chatzah Feged, was Godel Shebegdolim. Sei as a mashpia, sei as a masker of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Chatzah Feged was. Reb Zalman didn't feel he knows what it means to be a chassid, a Rebbe. And Reb Nochem Goldschmidt spent with him months learning with him chassidus and explaining to him what a Rebbe is, what his kashrus is. And then for Rosh Hashanah, I believe, when Chatzah offered him the ticket, he said, now I'm ready to go. Now I'm ready to go. By the way, Reb Zalman, I have a video, if you haven't seen it, it's online, it's worth watching. Talks about the Rebbe and his brother Reb Leibel. He met them in Yaktinislov, and he describes them. It's very interesting. They put it in early days. They cited it. So, the Babich Chassidim, wherever you are, there is a messer. You know what a messer is? A message. There's an approach. Tit olam haba chassidim memenu nitzmachim. If you're in that kav, you're in. If not, you're not in yet. You're not in yet. You could get in, but you have to dedicate yourself to this. And this takes work. And work is healthy. If you don't work, my father always said, you know, he's a Romanian Jew, but it's feuler zak. You know what a feuler zak means? A feuler means lazy. Zak is a sack, but it doesn't rhyme in English. You're a lazy guy. Work. My father always taught us growing up, you don't get the job that you want, go out and paint windows, go schlep water. Talking about Fola Khan, one Simchas Torah, Nun Zayin, Nun Ches, Nun Tes, I forget, Samach, one of the years, I went into the 770 after the Hakofis in the Rebbe's room. Rebbe Yoel would go in, and then he would go home. And then he would sit for hours at his table, bringing. So I went into the room, and I said to him, because it was a zman, it was a very special time. I said, Rebbe Yoel, Zog epis, say something, tell me something, tell me something. And I was very surprised when he told me. And he said, and I guess this was on his mind, and why it was on his mind, I don't know, but he said it crushed me. He said, Du kannst sich nicht vorstellen, you can't imagine was for a dachkus, what type of poverty we had when we came to Eretz Yisrael in 1935, 40, 45. he didn't cry, but he was so broken. And it's Simchas Torah night, after dancing, hakafas. That's what he shared with me. I don't know why, but that's what he shared with me, and I share it with you. Again, not to bring out the negative and the depressive and all that. But when you know where you come from, and you know where you could reach, then the world is open to you. It mamash is. So, it's Simchas Torah. It's a time of freilichkeit, happiness. But happiness doesn't mean shtusim. Rabbi Yoel always had a word he would share. He would say, Los de shtusim auf Tisha B'Av, und the seriosne and the seriousness of Purim. Bacher would come in, just in the later years, to Rabbi Yoel, Purim, emetz gemacht, meshuggah. Rabbi Yoel would say basically, cut it out. Purim is adel yada. To reach a point of adel yada is l'mayla metam v'das, not to drink and become cuckoo and meshuggah. You want to make yourself silly? Do it on Tisha B'Av. Chassidim, emes Chassidim teach us that there is an avodah here. There is a path. There is a trajectory. There is a mahalach. This isn't just, I'm here today, gone tomorrow. Who lives like that? My father always used the words, it's not such an edel word, but it's important. Lebt sich a chazische Tag. He lives a piggish day. Like a chazer. That's what life's about, living like a chazer. Fressing and sleeping and surfing the internet. That's what life's about. Learn another Plat Gemara. Learn another Sefer Shulchan Aruch. Learn another Maimon Chassidus. Go out, put film with a Yid. Do something meaningful. What are you wasting your time for? The worst thing's to waste your time and your brain. You're frying your brain, not through drugs, but through wasting your time. Do it meaningful. And that's what Chassidus Chabad is. It teaches you to be meaningful, to be serious. Serious doesn't mean, I was telling one of the groups I was speaking to today, to walk around. Tachmurit. But serious means there's something important happening right now that Rebbe teaches us. Mashiach is a reality. It's not a figment, we say in English, a figment of someone's imagination. Someone made up an idea, there'll come a day, Mashiach will come, Come on. Every day is a Mashiach day. But emes, how? When learn to medaven, to mehelf tayid. You know, it's interesting. When the Chaverim of the Alter Rebbe came to him and they said that they want to do a reciprocal Reish Mem Ches, which means an excommunication on the Goyin who put a Reish Mem Ches, an excommunication on the on Chassidim. So they said that they were told in a cholam or whatever the case, they were told that unless they can find someone who can match the Goyin in learning, it won't work. So Rabbi Yisrael of Polotsk, I believe, and the Shlomo Kaliner, different Gersois, different Sikhs, who were the two, came to the Alter Rebbe and they said, you are the one that can match the Goyin in learning. But Mela, in order for us to succeed with putting a reciprocal Reish Mem Chesed communication on the Goyin, we need you to join, to sign. The Alter Rebbe said, B'shum oifenat. They were willing. Dafke they were willing, and Dafke the Alter Rebbe said no. And you know why? It's printed in the Sichos, printed in the Rishimas also. Go to the Purim and other places. He said because if we put the type, this is what Alter Rebbe said, the type of Reish Mem Ches, the excommunication that we would have to put on the Goin will be one that will cause him to have kfira. Rahman l'sam hoyelisia, and that will cause a great Chilul Hashem, and I'm not participating. Because there'll be a great Chilul Hashem. So Reb Shlomo Karlina said to the Alter Rebbe, with who was standing there, Reb Moshe, his son. The way I heard it, I can't find the Lashon exactly, but something similar. Okay. He cursed Reb Moshe by saying, we'll see who will cause a Chilul Hashem. I'm not going into the story now. It's a whole discussion. As Rebbe Matis wrote a book about it. I'm not going to go into it right now. But I want to bring out that who did not want to put on the excommunication, Dafke Alter Rebbe. Avas Yisrael, on the Goin. All of them were willing. All the Gdoile at Tzadikim, they were willing to put the Reish Mem Ches on the Goin. Dafke Alter Rebbe said no. You talk about Avas Yisrael. It's in our bloodline, Avas Yisrael. Well, the Eberstone's helping. May Hashem help us. That we live more and more with these truths. And we don't let anything get in the way. And we have real love and concern about everyone, each other, and not allow, conditions and exceptions and reasons, excuses. When the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, listen to this. Tov Reish, 1929, 1930. So he stayed for the first 2 weeks in Borough Park, on the corner of 46th Street and 14th Avenue, which then there was a house in the corner. It was Rabbi Elia Simpson's new house. Rabbi Elia Simpson, the Chayza by the Rashab, first lived in Harlem. His brother lived there, then he moved over, took a job in Rabbi Ushpal Shul, which they knocked down on 12th and 41st, a 100-year-old shul. He was a Rav there, but there were, a lot of not from people and issues. In 1928, Rabbi Simpson was a Rav there. So in 1929, he makes his own shul, I believe, builds the shul, new house, gives the second floor to the Frierdiker Rebbe. So if you look at the Gem video, the Frierdiker Rebbe is talking from the porch. That's on the corner of 46th Street and 14th Avenue. I made a clip on it if you want to know the details on YouTube for those that, Rahman al-Islam, look at YouTube. So, the Frierdiker Rebbe, they came, Rabbonim came from all over the greater New York area to give shalom to the Rebbe, to the Frierdiker Rebbe, right? And it was a balagan. And people couldn't get in. The next day, the Frierdiker Rebbe got complaints from Rabbonim that he came to see him, they couldn't say shalom. So the Rebbe called Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, who came in 1926. Rabbi Simpson came to America in 1923. He came in 26. And the Rebbe says, Yisrael, I thought you would make Seder, and you'd let in the Rabbonim, you'd organize it. And Yisrael Jacobson said, Rebbe, Rabbi Simpson, the Kramers, they're older, they've been here longer. He didn't blame them, but he's like saying, I'm the new kid on the block. I don't want to, stick my nose in where I don't belong. And listen to what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, and Label alternative, Label, our Mashpi in our shul in Borough Park, said that Rabbi Jacobson, his Zayda, walked around with this in his pocket all of his life. The following answer from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yisrael, next to Mo, Villich Nisheren, excuses. Excuses are excuses. You have a good excuse. Rabbi Simpson came earlier. The Kramers are in charge. You don't want to, stick your nose where you don't belong. Excuses. Rabbi Jacobson walked around with it. Rabbi Jacobson was a Ish Godel, a great man, a great, great man. Could talk about him all night. An Asken Amiti. There's a Lashon Label showed me in the Igros Kodesh tremendous lashon that the Rebbe writes about Rabbi Jacobson. Mamish, an asken, nifla, chassidish yid, harav, a Talmud Chacham. All the American boys, the Hechts, Kolotny, Barnetsky, and Levy, all time, on and on. They're all his Talmidim. They would have been Litvische if they would have been from. Okay? They learned in Tevet Mordechai Oldtime told me, I spoke to him a lot. Mordechai Oldtime told me, you can't imagine what was going on in New York and in Brooklyn in the 1920s and 30s, where boys went to Chaim Berlin and Tevet during the day, and at night they went to college, to Brooklyn College. They became Apikurim because of one Jewish professor who was a denier of Torah min Hashemayim. And they had a course called Biblical Criticism, Biblical Analysis, Rahman Litzlan. And he killed boys that were learning Gemara in the morning and were from and Gevorn Apikurim, Rahman Litzlan. Mordechai Oldtime told me this. Mordechai told me this. He knew these boys, his friends. So the Frierdiker Rebbe told this to Rabbi Jacobson, and he keeps it in his jacket, in his kapota pocket till his day of passing, because no excuses. We always look for excuses, more excuses. Was hat man from excuses? You're right. You have a reason. Oh, but the oni darf doch essen. The poor person has to eat. So Rabbi say, let's stop with the excuses. Let's get to work. All the meisters are gewaldig. We have to do tenfold, 100-fold, be'emes. And to revitalize and bring Chassidus to the other kreisen in a peaceful way, in a sholomdike way. You had a yid here, Rav Naiman of Sholom. The bells are dying, I think. Rav Naiman was the grandson or the son of the story with the Rebbe Rashab in 1903, where he fell asleep on the sofa with Freud. You know that story? It's in the Rishima Sos, and the Rebbe spoke about it in Parshas B'chosei Tavshin Chav Beis. Rabbi Naiman was from the third daughter. You have people around here. Me lernt Chassidus. Me weiß a Wort Chassidus. Chassidus is gewaldig. Be'emes. The Rashbatz. You heard of the Rashbatz of Shmuel Betzalel. Of Gata Taich. I heard this in Rabbi Yisrael Friedman over Sholem. Lokeil Baruch Ne'imis Yiteinu. Lokeil, to God. Baruch Ne'imis Yiteinu. Gives us blessing, sweetness. Hat der Rashbatz geteicht. Lokeil Baruch Ne'imis Yiteinu. Whatever you consider sweet and honey and the best, we have honey here, right? Whatever you consider gewaldig, gib avek zu Gott, yiteinu lokeil. Are we willing to give away what we consider precious and dear to God? This is what he told me in the name of the Yehud from Chassidim, a taich for the Rashbatz. I told this over to a Pilchik who was stolen Chassidim, the Pilchiks, whose father and uncle learned in 770 Tufshin Tess, and they would always say, we were so close to becoming Lubavitchers. But our father pulled us out at the last minutes, so we remained stolen. Fine. So the son, wonderful person. And you know, the Levitin, Shmuel's son, Binke, Yom Levitin, was married a Pilchik. So they had a kesher. A lot of stories about that. So he said that I told him this taich, and every time he sees me, he says, "Zog me the taich, der man me noch amol, remind me again, lokel baruch dibus niyiteinu." Let's emulate that. L'chaim. I think we'll end the Fabrengen, put in the formal part, and we mamshich another time. It's a very close ride from Montreal to New York, especially if you're flying. So the Eibusher will help that we'll come back, Gesundheit, Freiligkeit, and again, a great Koyach to Reb David and Reb Avram. Mamish, I said to him, he says, come to Fabrenga. I says, you have here a Rebbe Mochkin, you have a Rebbe Shemeir Gerari, you have a Minkovich, Rebbe Yosef Minkovich, you have Lison and Paris, you have all these Chassidim and many others. What do you need? Chaim Dalfin, who's an Americana tzutzik. You know what Americana tzutzik is? A chocolatkin is, you know, a sugar daddy, right? A sugar daddy with coating and sweets and chocolate and ice cream. Come on. These Chassidim were Russian Chassidim. They come from the 50s, the 60s, whatever. The Chaim gespart. So I came. But you need to bring yourselves. Rabbi Greenglass is Neilum Emes, 15 years. He's looking down. You see a video, very nice. But come on, you guys have to be the Rabbi Greenglasses. I mean, you know, and you could do it. You can have done. But Emes, really. But that was not a Valentine. You have to just want to do it. Do you really want to do it? Or, maybe, yes, no. We have to wait once a year for Reb David to make a pa'ula like this in a beautiful hall with Essen, Mamish, Gewaldik, right? Right? No. I was speaking to him before, a few weeks ago. I see these clips of Reb Eliev, the Garlitsky, with Rabbi Greenglass and Rabbi Hendel. It's a Maitiv, and after Maitiv, they sit down, Mizok Tavot, Minat Alechayim, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour, they go home. It's like, you need posters, you need publicity. Okay, listen, today people are listening online and fine. What I'm saying is, don't limit yourself. It's, what are we now? Teves, right? Shvat's coming. Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Yud Shvat. Yud Gimel Shvat. Just saying, Chof Bei Shvat. Doesn't mean you have to sit 4 hours and Fabring. 10 minutes, 15 minutes is good. But it should be Bepnimius, together. You know, how could it be that you go through a Yom of the Paga and you don't say Alechayim, you don't say a word, you don't say, come on. You know, it's like, the Rebbe wants us to live, see this. My shver with Chazar, there were 3 people at Chazar at my Shabbos in Australia. The Rav Perlov, one Shabbos. Reb Itcher Groner, the other Rav Shabbos, another Shabbos, and my shver, Reb Chaim Serebransky. They took turns, 3. Okay. There was a chassid, Reb Abba Pliskin, Al Shalom, a contemporary of Mendel, Reb Zalman, and Reb Shiakor, those chevre from Kharkov. And he once heard my shver say Chassidus, Chazar Chassidus, and he really loved it. So he went over to his friend, Reb Zalman. He said, Zalman, dein Sohn Chaim, kennt Chassidus. He knows Chassidus. So Reb Zalman turned to his chaver, Reb Abba Pliskin, he says, Ken Chassidus is garnish lebt mit Chassidus. He lives with Chassidus. You know Chassidus. Okay. You have to live with Chassidus. Living with Chassidus is gorandish. It's a very different thing. A hergish, a regish. Chevre, wir können da sitzen a ganze Nacht und darschen und hacken a Scheinig. And, you know, my year, was wird sein? So, mit Gerät, ich mache mich sein a zweite Mal, mit Hashem. And a gracious shkoyach again to Reb David, Reb Avram, and everyone else who brought us together and made such a gewaldige, beautiful Irua. And in this shul, the Rav for many years was Reb Chaim Denberg, whose father, I think, was Rabbi Mendel Denberg, whose brother was Shaya Denberg, my mechutin, who's named after him, who was a Tom and taught at Rashak Smicha in 1915. And this shul, I don't know if he came tonight. Did anyone see Professor Alan Nadler? Was he here tonight? No. He told me he was coming, but I guess he didn't make it. Jeder Yid is tired. Amol verkriegt men. Relax. Relax. The Rebbe knows how to take care of himself. Believe me. You know, there's many svarim that I wrote there. And I write sometimes controversial things. But how you write it, how you position it, how to look at people, how to understand two sides to the coin. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but Baruch Hashem, I could tell you that I've been invited to many different kinds of groups and organizations with philosophies and shittas. It makes no difference. When you talk from the heart, it makes no difference. I want to end off with one more story. What? L'chaim, l'chaim. In the Catskills, there's a bungalow colony called Mountain Lodge. You've heard of it? So, there was a Yid, his name was Mendel Greenbaum. I think one of the brothers, Yossi, learned here in Montreal. Their father. Mendel was in the Korean War. Mendel drove the Rebbe in the 1940s. He was a simple Yid. I knew Mendel, and I spent time with him in Florida talking and interviewing him, which, by the way, I didn't say earlier, and unfortunately I should have said it. Not that I need your business, but I don't want you to go to the earth with all your memories buried. Young people, I'm not talking to you, but the older people, you have a whole life in front of you. A whole life with you. Who knows your story? Trust me, your kids don't really know your story. Most kids don't. You need to get someone to do oral history, family oral history. I'm not talking about Jem and the Rebbe, I'm talking about your life, your parents, grandparents, where you come from. It's very important. It costs a few dollars, but I promise you, your kids, grandkids, and grandkids are going to thank you for it. I've done so far about 10 Hasidim. One of them just passed away. He was 97, or was 96, 97, 98, I forget. And thank God the family commissioned me to do it. We have 8 to 10 hours of oral history. What they do with it is their business. It's theirs, not mine. It doesn't go online. So pass on the message to people who are 70 plus. Really. I can't tell you how many people who I know who have such memories and such stories and no one knows. Finished. Finished. Anyway, so I'm in Mountain Lodge one Shabbos. My brother used to have a bungalow there, so I went there one Shabbos. Kiddush time. It's 150 people. And there was, thank you. Thank you very much, Schneer, Walensky, for helping me. Tiskele mitzvahs. Hashem should bench you with kol tuv sela. Only good things, begashmis ubruchnias, including finding a nice wife, a good wife. Anyway, so Kiddush. Reb Shlomo Zarchi is there, his brother is there, Reb Zusha Willem is there, all of a sholem. Substantial people, learned people, Chassidim, Amdonim. This is in Mountain Lodge. 150 people, I can't like here. A lot of tables, food, chayim. Mendel Greenbaum, who was a soldier, an ex-soldier, is making kiddush on a glass of scotch or vodka, I forget. Whatever. He downs the cup like it's water. I'm telling you. I was sitting right next to him. You know? And then he stands up, and I'm going to illustrate what he does. He has his cup here. He goes Yechi, Adonenu, Morenu, Rabbeinu, Melech, HaMoshiach, Leolam Vaed. He does it 3 times. There wasn't a pin drop in that room. And I promise you, there were very big anti-Mashiachism there. Big ones. I know them. No one said a word. Now, do you think they were scared of him? When Mendel Greenbaum, who the Rebbe called Mendel der Soldat, because he was a soldier, the Rebbe gave him that name, Mendel der Soldat. When he raised that cup and he said Yechi, you know what he was saying? I love you, Rebbe. I'm not forgetting you. I miss you. And everyone in that room saw that he's talking from the heart. Because Mendel Greenbaum didn't know the intricacies of Yechi, and Yechi HaMelech, and Yechi, and not Yechi, and how Yechi, and ba. I promise you, he was not at that level or interested in those things. He knew one thing. It's a glass of scotch. It's a Kiddush Shabbos. And he loves the Rebbe. And he wants to remember the Rebbe. So he screams out from his heart what he screams out. Once in Los Angeles, Rebbe Shochat, one of my Rosh Hashivas, Friday night, the Bachram are singing by Chodoy the Yechi. Rebbe Shochat is very far from Rosh Hashiv. And he lets them sing Yechi as they're dancing. And then he stops. He says, stop. And he says, if you don't sing Yechi with Kavana, you're not allowed to sing it. If you're singing it, you better mean it. And if you don't mean it, be quiet. I promise you that if we were to express our feelings, one person with Yechi, one person without Yechi, but the ikid is here, the kavodas halev, the sincerity. I love you, Rebbe. I miss you, Rebbe. I want to do for you. We wouldn't have any issues, differences, machlekes, and foolishness and stupidity. Okay? Convinced. Because I saw it in the room. I saw it with my own eyes in the room. They didn't throw eggs at him. They didn't throw water on him. They didn't throw wine at him. They didn't tell him, shut up, sit down. Gurdish. Nothing. Nada. Because he meant it. If you mean something, if you're really genuine, it's the Shema, it's for the Eibishter, for the Rebbe, for Abbas Yisrael. That's all. That was the last story I want to tell you. That let's not get caught up and hung up on you know, It's not just about Yechi, not Yechi. It's about all kinds of things. Stop. Do. Don't just learn Chassidus. Leb Chassidus. Give away your bed for Nachayid. Give away your gashmis. You sleep on the floor. My mother, Elel Sholem, would park herself on the floor right next to the couch so my grandmother, who had dementia, if she would fall off, she would fall off onto my mother, not on the floor. Are you ready to do that? Kibbud Avim. Are we ready to do that? I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Are you ready? To sleep on the floor next to your mother, so if she falls off the couch, she falls on you, not on the floor. You understand? When you think about these things, at least when I think about these things, I see how infantile, how little I am. It's mamish little. Mamish little. Everything we do is like, come on. Leib's uns helfen. We should go with simcha and strength and koyach and taka bizoicha with the Gula Shlema, because if the Eibishter is waiting, I'm sorry to say, there's nothing to wait for. There's nothing to wait for. We've waited enough. And we need to continue. And the Rebbe didn't get morbid. Even when the Rebbe said, Yechavals Ketans, Level Larik, and everything else, you think the Rebbe was depressed? Chas v'sholem. He went on with more strength and more strength. And then even after the stroke, the Rebbe continued coming out. I mean, everyone sees these things and was there. no such thing. There's no room for melancholy. When you come here and see 150 people in a room on a Monday night, and tomorrow there's work, and today it's snowing, and it's the middle of a week, and it comes to Praven Yud Chavdalet Teves? Wow. Be'emes. Be'emes. The Alter Rebbe is looking down, he's saying, I have Siddim. I have Yidden. I have an army. Look what they're doing. It's Chavdalet Teves, 11, 12 at night, whatever the time is now. And verbrengt, and meret, and zingt, and hat. You know? Anyway, Chevre. In Daf Koyach. Chaim, Chaim.
Chaim v'vrach, l'chaim.
What time is it now? Stop.
Ay, 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 ay. By the Rebbe's Farbrengen, every Farbrengen would end off with the famous niggin of Shibane. I'd like to ask Elisha to put us on the Shibane, and whoever has to make a bracha achreina should make a bracha achreina. And I have to give back the hall at 12 o'clock, but you could still continue Farbrengen in yeshiva, and you could take the food with you. A little louder. Please sing along. Shibane beisamim das beira beyameinu v'sechameinu v'sechasecha.
I don't have a calculator on.
I was unfair. So,